the Manhattan City Commission. We welcome you all. I'd like to have Jared Wassinger from the city staff call the roll of commissioners.
Mayor Morse,
Present.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Present.
Commissioner Reddy,
Present.
Commissioner Butler,
Present.
Commissioner Motta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And the next item is we need to determine if we're, I assume we will allow public comment, but we need a motion and a second.
Mayor, I move we have public comment for work session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Jared, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse.
Yes, yes.
Motion passes.
Oh, sure. You know, it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on our work session agenda this evening is a proposed use of city parking lot in the 400 block of Pierre for a proposed Manhattan Housing Authority project involving Carlson Plaza, Garden Grove 1 and 2 at the address 400 block Pierre, and Colorado Plaza senior housing units. So looks like our presenter is Aaron Estabrook, Executive Director of the Manhattan Housing Authority.
Hello, Commissioners. Mayor, thank you for this opportunity to present and discuss this project that we've been rolling out and gaining some community input around. As you can see, this is the picture from on top of Carlson Plaza looking out in Boys and Girls Club on the left. You can see the backside of that strip mall on the right, and then the parking lot there with the Houston Ballroom in the background. I'm going to start out by just kind of running through a few of the organizations and roles. We do have Michael Snodgrass as our co-developer on, and I will turn it over to him in a little bit of time. He does have to get off, so for another call before 6:30, so we will move quickly. But clearly the Manhattan Housing Authority, our co-developer, Oikos Development Corporation, ODC, is a nonprofit community development corporation. They are located and housed out of Kansas City. Michael has done a lot of projects in Kansas and has connections to Manhattan, so we're thrilled to be working with him. Did I break it? Thanks, Chair. So we have the Housing MHK Fund was a 501c3, a nonprofit created in the process of knowing that we have to do some conversions, to do some rehabilitation to our portfolio. There needs to be a nonprofit involved, but they would be an instrumentality of the Housing Authority, meaning that the Housing Authority would have the majority of the board control for that nonprofit. In essence, it is a extension of the Housing Authority into a nonprofit role. National Church Residence is our partner, and really who is involved heavily with Garden Grove. They're the owners, operators of Garden Grove 1 and 2, and Colorado Plaza. They have 4 properties in Kansas, 3 of them located here in Manhattan. Of course, HUD is a big player in this, and why really, until we got to a point in late June, early July, that it hadn't come forward to the public in a meaningful way. So we've gone through a lot of bureaucracy and hurdles at the federal level to get to a point where there is some light and a solution that we wanted to bring forward to the public. They would have a lot of roles to play in here, and it's a very complicated project given that there's HUD subsidies on the properties that would need to be converted and transferred, and there are different types of subsidies. It gets very much into the weeds, but that is their role in this, to oversee any kind of movement and changes to either the elderly, senior housing, or public housing that involve tax credits and low-income affordable rental assistance to those that are eligible. Everyone under 80% AMI is generally eligible for public housing, and sometimes it's limited to 50% AMI for Section 8 or our housing choice voucher. KHRC is this kind of this de facto state housing office. They oversee and administer the federal funds, the tax credits. They have a role to play in distributing funding and financing and leveraging tools that the state and the federal have for any kind of development. And then the city's role. So why we're here is the city's been partnering, working with National Church residents on Garden Grove 1 and 2 and FEMA in that regard for some time now. But if we were to discuss, and we are, the parking lot, that would also bring the city and its involvement into this partnership. So we kind of zoom back out from the idea of who's who and those players, and really on a local level, it's not a matter of if but when is something we keep hearing over and over again in two respects, and what's really married us between National Church residents having a problem and the Housing Authority having a problem that is a community problem. Garden Grove 1 and 2 are buildings located adjacent to Wildcat Creek in the West Loop area. They will flood again. It's Chad Bunger, community development. I think Wildcat, we've heard it over and over and over again that this is going to flood again. Something needs to be done. It flooded pretty heavily in 2018, the Labor Day flood. Those folks were displaced for more than a year often, and they have not, the solution hasn't been brought forward. So that is one part of the problem. That's the National Church residents part of the problem. And then similarly, we have our own issue with Carlson Plaza, which is 47 public housing units. Public housing is different than the type of subsidy that's located on Garden Grove. Those are Section 8. Let's just call it Section 8, or they're Section 202, but it gets complicated. They're different vouchers than in public housing. We would try to do some conversion there, but the problem we have overall at Carlson Plaza is it is becoming, it's a HUD property. Once it reaches obsolescence, the obsolescence is a test that HUD administers for total development cost, and once you get over 60%, decisions need to be made. We're over 60%. We're actually pushing over 90% on our estimates, which means demolition is necessary. So if demolition's mandated by HUD, that is what we have been dealt. And so two problems exist with Carlson Plaza, 47 people being displaced there due to the condition of the structure and the need to rehab it or raise it and rebuild. And then Wildcat Creek could flood anytime and displace those folks that are there. This is a graphic we keep going back to. Commissioner Mata serves on the Housing Authority Board with us, and I appreciate him and I kind of put this in as we tried to. There's so many moving pieces and parts and complications to this. It really is not easy to distill. So if people are saying this is confusing, what are you talking about? You're using acronyms. You're all absolutely true, and it's hard, and we're to distill. But we are talking about these units: Carlson Plaza, Colorado Plaza, and then Garden Grove 1 and 2. Really focusing on the bottom here for the purposes of the city's input and the commissioner's input related to this parking lot. And if Garden Grove 1 and 2 residents, which is owned and operated by National Church residents, those folks were able to be relocated on this footprint. And that is the concept that we've moved forward with starting early this spring and moved through the bureaucracy at the national level to bring it back down to the local level and start this discussion about the public good and the parking lot. Of all the things that I've said that are disappointing and discouraging, right now we're at a moment in time when there's probably more housing financing available in different ways than there ever has been. So it's a scary problem to have, but it's a great time to have that scary problem because there are tools to get financing either through tax credits. There's a new state tax low-income housing tax credit program that just was announced this morning, the allocation for that, how that'll work, and that's in addition to the federal tax credits. You've heard a lot about the ARPA funds. There's also home ARP funds that will be coming in 2023, and we do have a pending request into the state, the SPARK, the original SPARK committee that we kind of probably remember from almost 2 years ago, I think. They $10 million request to match for this project, and that I think is still on the table. I mean, they have not finalized how that'll be allocated and dished out, but it is, we're competitive in that regard too. So not giving up on that request. All entities involved are not-for-profit, which makes this a little different than if it was a private developer or somebody else coming in. Everybody engaged is not-for-profit, a nonprofit. And the estimated cost here is changing daily due to interest rates and financing mechanisms, but also the cost of labor and supplies. But in general, $10 million per building, a $20 million project for downtown. And then, of course, we would utilize local vendors, consultants, contractors. We've tried to ease our way into this process, looking at local architects, when we did the redevelopment or rehab of apartment towers, we used local contractors. We are absolutely committed to doing that again. Outreach and community engagement. You're familiar with this kind of timeline, but just for the public's interest, I started the Housing Authority last March, and we discovered this problem last summer in Carlson, where there was a lot of mold, there was asbestos, there was issues that made it emergent in nature, and we got in and did as much as we could, got the people out of areas that would be subject to their health issues, and we got to a point where we needed to raise that concern up the chain. It went up the chain. It took a year, come back down, different proposals, different ideas, different partnerships, and they kind of HUD discovered and married the problems of National Church residents and us, and we've got this solution before you. So that all took till last May and June, and then July, here we are. We started one-on-one meetings with stakeholders. I began walking the neighborhoods and talking to people on July 14th and 15th, and then we had a event in the downtown Manhattan, with downtown Manhattan in the parking lot with some of the business owners that morning, discussed and looked at the plan. We've also had that joint city-county meeting, the community meeting at the library where we had 40 people attend and got good feedback there, and then here we are today. So the community input so far is 6,000 people online have viewed the materials, and that's targeted at Manhattan. It was targeted to our city, and then this is more of an impressive number to me because usually people passively look at things, but 150 or so last time I looked had clicked through to the website, had looked at the materials, had potentially filled out the feedback form, which is still live at the bottom. If anyone wants to go and give more feedback, please do. We had about 40 individuals attend the community meeting, 5 hours of dialogue that was captured with the help of facilitators from the Institute of Civic Discourse and Democracy, transcribed into 240 pages, And those words are drawn out into some points here where I was trying to build some themes. It's clear that we were talking around issues about people, about parking, about housing, and about community needs in this space. That was the discussions we had. Parking is certainly on the tip of everyone's tongue, but it was good to see that we were talking about people as well in that respect and how we use this space to serve people. Let me see. All right, so here we go. Themes. To build off of that, we have our impact, the parking availability. I've heard it loud and clear. And there is, from the very beginning, our board even discussed would it be even possible to do something on the parking lot without removing parking, because that is the goal we all have. So this concept of building a layer above and preserving the parking underneath emerged from that we would have a pedestal where the housing would be on top and the parking would still remain on the bottom. So very important and must be thoughtfully considered throughout the process. And we're about 5 minutes into a 3-hour movie. We're at the very beginning of this process, but parking is baked in from the very beginning in the concept. So there's also people. At the same time, tons of discussion about parking. We also get kind of this push of people saying on the other, side of it, well, yeah, we have universal agreement that relocating these seniors from the floodplain makes a ton of sense and needs to be done, and how can we do it? So that's there. The other thing is transparency, and this is where it's both exciting to me and revealing in some ways that we are being so transparent so early that some of the feedback we're getting is, well, why weren't we brought on sooner? And I think that is more of a condition of how things typically are. But the fact that we're trying to bring partners in and being transparent and getting all the feedback right now on a project that might go through 2025 or longer, and we're less than 3 weeks into it, is a testament to our willingness to work with anyone and be transparent through this process. Again, back to the education, super complicated. Almost everybody had questions about one piece of it, and as soon as some of the people that felt like they had a grasp of what was happening, they would also say, well, maybe not. So it's taken me a year to feel confident enough to explain some of these things, and I don't expect somebody passively reading a headline or walking by and seeing a flyer to get the full complexity of this, and it's going to take a lot of education. I understand that, and we will just continue to talk about these issues because, again, it's not a matter of if, but when these two problems really become larger community issues. So in that vein, wanting to open it up before we said, here's our plan, thumbs up or down, we are wanting to explore the community needs. Is there possible collaboration with Flint Hills, with the ATA? Is there ways to leverage federal transportation funds? I think one of the things we learned already from that community engagement that we had at the library was from Director Smith talking about that there may be federal funds that are attached to the transportation that, if they are for low-income housing related projects, there's some overlap there. So we're drawing out and discovering things through this exploring of community needs. Workforce housing, it is not something that is unknown at this point, which is kind of makes me happy, because 3 years ago I think it wasn't something many people talked about, but it has been talked about a lot. We'd like to hear and welcome that input. I think the housing market analysis and a lot of people have input there, but there's been other ideas thrown out there, and this is a time to dream, to have ideas, to think about how that could be used. The space for childcare, we always see our surveys come back and say housing's a need, childcare is a need. Can we make those needs work in this space, or can we make at least that area safer for Boys and Girls Club, for the traffic that goes through there, for our own residents that are already downtown in Carlson Plaza and Colorado Plaza. So there's a ways to talk about this if we're talking about bringing everyone to the table and dreaming bigger, finding the points that we can align on and make work and respect everybody's current status as well. So also, the relocation of the senior center has been discussed a few times, and it's not something that is a deal breaker by any means, but it does make a lot of sense in some veins. But we are leaving that on the table as we want to talk to the senior center. We want to talk to the area agency. Had a great discussion, I thought, with their director yesterday, and how we can make this space work better for both the area agency, and if there's an interest of the senior center, what would that look like? I'm going to hopefully get to Michael right here. Michael, I'm going to bring you on. This is a picture of one of the projects in Carson City, Nevada, and are you there, Michael?
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Michael. I'm Michael Snodgrass. I'm the president and CEO of Oikos Development Corporation. We're a not-for-profit 501c3, and we, as you can see, we have projects pretty much everywhere, including Carson City, Nevada. I'm building 86 units as we speak down in Garden City. In the past, I've built other projects down in Garden City, Ulysses Lake, and this is one though that is an interesting one. We should be closing on this construction loan in about 3 weeks, so we're pretty far along and starting construction on September 12th. It's 80 units, 40 of which are full senior with an elevator. The other 40 are family, and then of course we're putting solar, rooftop solar, and we're building to the NGBS green standards, National Green Build Standards. So the HERS ratings, which is it's just a fancy word for how much energy you use, will be in the 30s to 40s on this project, which technically means you should be able to save about 60% on your utility bill. And so this is just kind of a concept of actually these are formal of not what we would build in Manhattan, because I think what we'd want to do is we want to work with everybody, all the partners, and design something that fits the area. The concept of building over the parking lot, I like because it's right near where Carlson Plaza already is. And so I think we just need to know, is this something that the city would entertain in order to move forward with additional studies, additional things. At every step of the way, the city would be involved, there's no way not to be in the design process. So, it won't be the first time we would be there, but so we can submit for funding, we have to have some sense of ability of where we would put the project. And the concept, I think, is to build over the parking lot for the first phase, at the same time being able to demolish then Carlson Plaza, and then build a bookend project right on top of Carlson Plaza again. So this project in Carson City is, like I said, it's 80 units total. And that project is about right at 20 million for just those 80 units. The cost of construction is quite a bit higher. in Nevada, labor and materials are higher. So hopefully we can find some savings in Manhattan. So did you want me to say anything more about it? The Sierra Flats?
No,
Aaron?
I think it might be helpful also, partner with the tax credit process. The deadline is, early in the year, but we also have, and you have part of your proposal to us that was so exciting as we accepted that was your relationship with Praxis and the financial kind of giant they are in this world to make it work and make it all possible. If you want to mention.
Sure. So Praxis is one of our consultants. They're a national consultant and specialize in RAD type projects as well as all the HUD financing tools. And so they have their fingers throughout the country into different projects. This project is a 9% tax credit project with home dollars and National Housing Trust funds. The same financing tool would probably be in place for what are we going to call the project? Is it going to be Carlson Plaza Revisited or 2 or have we? I don't think we've even come up with a name for it yet. But for the state of Kansas, the tax credit, we have to put in a pre-application in January. Then the formal application will go forward in I believe it is March to April. And then the decisions, I know the decisions for this last round just came out in late July. So, during that time period, after then, you'll have in your pre-application, you'll need to have the concept, you'll need to have the site, and some fairly rudimentary architectural, not full-blown plans. Because if you're not selected, you don't want to spend $300,000 in architectural and then not receive the award. But you'll have some fairly simple plans, but renderings, right? What it'll look like, what you just saw. And then at the time of the selection, that's when you get to work with all your architectural engineering on the final to get the permit ready set and start construction. So there's a lot of time now to come up with the concept and what it could be before we submit the pre-application.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That's perfect. And, we're going to continue our next steps really are continue to seek that public input. We want to get, unfortunately, a National Church Residence consultant was unavailable tonight. He's going to come back to town. We want to have some meetings at Garden Grove. Since it's hard for those residents to get places, we want to come to them and talk to them, get all of their feedback captured. There are processes and rules that are very detailed about how, when somebody's in government assisted housing, how they are moved and displaced and how they're noticed. We haven't entered that phase, but we have been engaging as much as possible with the residents in MHA, and now we'd like to make sure that National Church residents and residents are also being engaged before it is, farther down the road. We'd have follow up on any questions from you and from the city, and just kind of what an MOU I think would look like, and getting that to you. This has been an interesting exercise, that there's people that certainly want to see the drawings of what the renderings would look like to make decisions if there should be an MOU. And there's, on the other side, people that would pay for those renderings unwilling to draw those things unless there's an MOU. So it is a little bit of a chicken egg kind of back and forth, but this is the way we have it, and what we can do is talk to you about that site control, pursue the application. If for some reason things were not to materialize, nothing is lost. The unraveling of the MOU, the project, the parking lot, everything stays the same. This is just us really asking for an opportunity to pursue the funding mechanisms that are enormous right now, and we don't want to be the last ones to the line to get the funding for what we need is 2 developments for these 2 populations. So that's all I have. Thank you, Michael, if you have anything else. All right.
On the National Church residence, property downtown, do you, what do you plan for that?
Colorado Plaza.
Yeah, Colorado Plaza, yeah.
National Church Residence intends to, that would be the last piece of, so we're talking maybe closer to 2025 or into 2024 for sure, that there would be a transfer of management and ownership to the housing authority so that it's all under our portfolio and they exit. When that happens, we would also be exploring how to rehab Colorado Plaza if it's necessary to rehab, but it is not in as bad a condition as these other 2 situations.
So it doesn't have mold issues?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't speak to that, but I've been told that it is, in pretty decent condition. It has been rehabbed not so long ago.
I see.
And if there are mold issues, we can abate those and fix them and do some rehab there. But it's not the priority right now for us.
So you wouldn't let the mold get out of control there?
Absolutely. And I suspect, I'm speaking for National Church residents, and I don't want to do that. I suspect they haven't allowed that to happen.
Yeah, okay. With regard to site control and your plan, what will rezoning be necessary?
Carlson Plaza is a PUD already, and there would be some changing, maybe. The parking lot, I'm not sure. I'd defer to the city staff.
I might have Stephanie just speak to that a little bit, but generally not. The downtown areas has specific zoning that doesn't necessarily require a rezoning.
From a parking lot to a 4-story residential building doesn't require rezoning?
No, right now the zoning is downtown district, downtown commercial. That's what the parking lot is zoned now. That would fit with what Aaron's proposing, so no rezoning of that site would need to occur.
Okay, no zoning issue. Just questions.
Yep. Oh, this
Okay.
is great.
And when you talk about the parking lot, are you talking about, when you want site control, are you talking about buying it or leasing it or what? From the city?
We a little bit inched into that conversation, and I think that is what we want to do is meet the necessary status for the tax credit application. Those are pretty general terms, and it's a lease. You can lease the land or even have the opportunity legally to buy it, and how you structure the MOU can say many things, but the intent is not to, if we don't have to take complete ownership, we don't need to take complete ownership. We just want to be able to apply for those funding mechanisms and make the MOU say what it needs to say.
Aaron, can I interject
Yes,
just
thank
quickly?
you.
I think the intent was to enter into an MOU, but because we want to maintain this as public parking, we would want to make sure that the city retained ownership of it, and probably do, most of the time you'll do like a 99-year land lease or something like that. And it's really, in this case, it's really not the land lease, it's more of an air lease. This is done more in, because you're building above it. And so a lot of places like San Francisco, New York, and Chicago, bigger cities do these air leases above existing buildings. So we have to work with the attorneys on the structure of the lease, but I see it as a lease and not an ownership issue.
Do our Stephanie, does our new Manhattan Development Code have air leases in it?
You know, that is not something we anticipated.
Pardon?
That is not something we had anticipated
Yeah.
when developing that, so it doesn't address that. I think that would be more probably a legal city manager's office issue.
Yeah, I think the MOU and the lease would govern all of those particulars, you know, from whose responsibility with regard to the building. You know, there's been some suggestion that even though it's public, there might be some type of spaces reserved for some of the residents in that facility. That's part of that discussion. You have that arrangement currently with apartments in the Dillard's lot, the landing units that are on 4th Street now, or get parking permits to park in the mall parking lot, which the city owns and leases to the mall. So those are things that would be worked out in that master lease.
In the MOU.
And I think there could be, you know, a couple of different things with regard to identifying what's needed in the MOU to move forward with a pre-application, as I understand it. And then if you're successful in that, you may come back and negotiate a more detailed one. But you certainly want to have an idea about what your expectations are, even at the pre-application standpoint.
I kept tripping over these things I'm asking, so that's why I appreciate having.
Great questions.
Let's see. Well, let me ask other commissioners. Surely you have questions?
Yes, so I have a few questions. Thanks for the presentations. This is the first time I actually heard it. I know you presented it at the City County, and at the library, and I was absent for both of those meetings. So it's good to get this. So my understanding right now is that Garden Grove 1 and 2 are not under the Manhattan Housing Authority.
Correct.
Okay, and they will be coming into it. Okay,
At a time, the transfer, our complete understanding of National Church residents is that they would not exit until there has been a full handoff with management and all of the residents' needs are being met. Like they're not in a hurry to leave. They want to leave with things in good order.
right. So are they under HUD?
They are not a public housing authority in that regard. They're a nonprofit. They're the largest senior housing nonprofit in the country, and but they do have to abide by HUD because they are in contracts with. So these units are specifically contracted through a HUD Section 202 contract, and there's different pieces to that, but it's HUD.
Okay. So under the Manhattan Housing Authority, there's already several properties under that. It doesn't seem like this is going to fix that problem. The problems with Carlson, mold and mildew, it seems, from what I read, that some of the residents from Garden Grove might be put in Carlson.
The new Carlson.
The new
We
Carlson.
would demo or rehab Carlson completely, and it would be a new structure.
And then these individuals would be
Yes.
moved into that. And that's still being worked on.
And the reason there isn't a lot of focus on that in this presentation or by me at this time is because that is a housing authority and HUD process that is really controlled by that obsolescence test, and there's triggers that come into place, and we have to do certain things because, of course, we don't want to have an obsolete building for government housing, so we fix those things. But it's outlined, it's a very specific process, and it doesn't involve the city at this time.
Right. Well, my other concern is the individuals that moved out of Carlson would come back. So would there be enough rooms for everybody? Would there be enough space? Because you outlined even a child care center possibility and all of these other things. So I'm just wondering, the main thing for me is that everybody has property, some kind of shelter.
Right.
And housing and residence. That would be priority number one for all of these fixtures that you're talking about.
When we discovered the mold and asbestos issues, when HUD allowed inspections to begin last summer in Carlson, we began, if you kind of remember, there was a similar situation in the towers, and there was a kind of a rush a little bit to get people out quickly. We have taken a different approach. We've taken people out and allowed them to be put into other units over the last year, to a point where we've dwindled the population in that building down to about 13 individuals, and we plan to work to get those 13 who do wish to relocate to another similar housing situation where they have either ADA needs or some specifics in the next few months. But there, you've emptied Carlson, and it can be demoed as we build on the parking lot. So then we're not, fingers crossed, there's not a Labor Day flood. That's the thing we can't control. If the 62 seniors at Garden Grove 1 and 2 become displaced before we can get done building somewhere for them to go, that's a situation that keeps us awake at night. But that's the urgency you hear from us, is we want to start getting going, because there isn't an alternative when they hit with flooding for them to be placed into another building. So ideally, we build the building, we relocate those seniors from Wildcat Creek area, that gets demoed and turned over back to the city property as green space, and nobody has been displaced a single day.
Yeah, and this is like a 2 or 3 year project, though. It's not like for this year.
Right, through 2025 at least, yeah.
So some of you also mentioned workforce housing, and my thinking is, whenever workforce housing comes up, and next year we start collecting our sales tax, I'm not thinking about workforce housing from the city, that type of funding to go into this type of housing. I'm thinking it separately. My concern is that you're going to come back and ask for the sales tax money for workforce housing in these properties.
To ease your concern, that's not, I don't even know if that would be possible from what HUD's perspective would be. But what is possible is on tax credit properties to have additional units, to have market rate units, to have other housing. And so I am a champion for preserving the 62 units and fixing Carlson. I'm also willing and listening to all of the ideas, because it is a community parking lot. It is a way to do things, and we have other issues. We have housing stock that we need. We have there's a lot of things. I don't know that if we do them all on that parking lot, there's no parking for sure. But we got to prioritize. I'm the champion of the Housing Authority's mission with National Church Residents and the HUD assisted units. If there's a champion for workforce housing that isn't necessarily the same project but combined and meshed in there, they're very welcome to engage with us in that discussion, and we can see how we can make it work.
Because there's a lot of people without the housing. What is your capacity right now for, I think, is it 98% full in HUD or 95%?
So our public housing is between 95 and, it's around 95%. Of our 232 public housing properties, we have these are alarming numbers, I think. We have over 500 people on our waiting list. A majority of those are for single 1-bedrooms. So about 200 to 300 are looking for 1-bedrooms that we don't have any space for them to go to. And for the Section 8 housing, which is your housing choice voucher, that allows you to only spend 30% of your income, but you can find your own home if your landlord will accept that voucher, and HUD picks up the difference in the rent. That list is over 900 people right now in our community, and we have not been able to issue a voucher for about a year. We hope Congress will allocate more funds to both of those projects, and the sad thing about inventory is for public housing is that we have the exact same inventory we've had since, before I was alive, unfortunately. We're not growing the public housing. That's just not a thing HUD's going to do. They will grow the vouchers and allow those to be distributed and go out, but they're not really investing in public housing buildings anymore.
And that's my major question, is how do we get more people into homes, into
Right.
housing of some kind? That's what we have out there, and I think the numbers you gave provide that challenge that we have in our community, so as opposed to the workforce housing part. I am interested in seeing the 240 pages, because the word diagram is good, but it doesn't
Okay.
tell me the essence of what questions were asked or what the comments were made. I think, when you say people, I don't know in one context. And so I would like to see that, and I tried to tap into some of these links, but I couldn't get a hold of some of the feedback that you received.
Okay.
And of the 40-some-odd individuals that came there, can you kind of do you have an idea of, was it organizations or was it individuals that live around that area? What kind, maybe if you can tell us a representation that was there?
It's a double-edged sword here, because we did make a decision with the Institute of Civil Discourse to allow people to be free to speak their mind without signing in. We thought that was important. We also thought it was important to allow people to anonymously submit information on the website. We want all the feedback, so I'm not able to tell you who was there, and that was intentional, but the words and the feedback are what we care about the most. I do know there was, all of the neighbors were invited, organizations were invited. 1,200, people saw the invitation. I don't know, we ended up with 40 people showing up, and we've had quite a few people submit feedback online, and some anonymously, and it's very welcome. I mean,
Right.
we want to hear it
I'm
all.
not saying I want to know who it is, I just want to know if it's the, like, in the neighborhood, not what type of organization.
I think it was a very good mix
Yeah.
of people between residents, service providers, business owners, construction people, housing people, senior service people. There was, kind of ran the gamut, in K-State, and yeah.
Right, the people that would be most impacted is what I want to know. So I'll probably, if you can send that, or some kind of, I'm not looking for names or organizations, but what kind of concerns, or what kind of positive comments, or what kind of challenges what was discussed, is what I'm trying to dive into a little bit more.
Sure.
I think parking will be a huge issue. We've received several comments about that, and discussed it with several members in our community, whether it be Boys and Girls Club or the Kansas Agency on Aging, or whatever, some of the senior citizen groups that are there. I know that the kitchen at the senior center is used quite actively right now, and that's also another subject topic to discuss as well, as we move along this dialogue.
It's exciting to hear, for me, some of the challenges those agencies in that neighborhood face, and with the pickup drop-off with Boys and Girls Club, or the distribution of meals by the senior center that is in a partnership with the area agency on aging, and those friendship meals, how they get put out, and how people access their building, and the Flint Hills Clinic downstairs, and Pawnee being and Houston Ballroom. Those are all, I am excited for them to come to the table and talk about their issues as a way that we can move forward and maybe make this a better fit, and find solutions for their problems as well.
Well, I'll stop my questions and I'll move on.
So, Aaron, appreciate the briefing. Just a couple points. I mean, the way I understand it, you've got a base project, which you're championing, which I think is good. We've got to get those people out of that floodplain, and we got the buyouts, and it's not gonna cost the city anything. So for me, that's a big priority, is to make that happen. And I think, this partnership with the other agencies to combine those buildings seems to make sense. Now, the part that's confused a lot of people is what I call the add-ons. It's sort of like, the way we did the levee project. We did the levee project, and we had little add-ons for the park. And you really got 4 add-ons here, basically. One might be what I call market rate housing. You called it workforce housing, but essentially, you would just have a property there somebody could rent, and I guess the housing authority would collect the cash on that then. So it'd be an income stream, which also makes sense to me. The idea of a daycare center, we discuss that all the time. I don't know if that's feasible or not. The idea of putting some retail there of some sort makes sense. And then lastly, the idea of locating the senior center there, though I'm on the senior center board, and I talked to them about that a couple weeks ago. They came to the meeting at the library, and they're not particularly championing the idea right now, is a nice way to say it, because they see some real issues with parking, and they really don't want the senior center to get viewed as being part of, some kind of Manhattan Housing Authority, that you would be running it. So there's some little friction there, so, for that to happen, it's gonna take a lot of salesmanship at this particular point, though I think it has merit if they can design a new center that's as big as the one they have, and maybe does a better job with that kitchen, because, that kitchen's a little constraint there on the meals, and so there are some big advantages there. But, most of the emails I got were centered on parking. And it's some of the agencies you mentioned that are around there that are very concerned about losing parking, and, in fact, I think, we had a meeting with DMI, and a lot of the local businesses are very concerned about losing that parking lot. So the one question I couldn't answer on that was one of the people wanted to know, are there any other sites possible, or is this the only one?
This, for us, there isn't other sites available that would meet these needs. And if we were to, let's say, abandon the downtown and just walk away from Carlson or something like that, it really gives a lot of people heartburn when they think about that, because it was designed to have assisted housing downtown and not to try to subject it to be on the periphery somewhere else, and to make it walkable, to make people to have access, or give people access to some of these amenities that the community has been investing in downtown, is kind of a barrier there. But is there property in America? Yes. Is there property we own? No. And where that would be,
See, my thought would be, I guess the email I got is basically, 2 of the buildings you already have the land, they could stay there. It's the one that you're gonna build in the parking lot, is it possible to locate that somewhere else? Is it possible to buy some other areas along Colorado Street or Pierre Street, and place it there? That was the question I was asked. I don't know the answer to that.
Is it possible? Yes. Would it be something that that we would be involved in? No. That's a National Church Residents decision. This brings us together in a way that we are working to build a downtown affordable housing campus that the Housing Authority would be managing and running for the next 50, 100 years. There's not a vision in place, and we have enough to do with Carlson Plaza that we would prioritize that. If anything, try to figure out the initial, which was not the best solution, so we didn't bring it forward, is to get 109 people on that footprint. And that means a bigger building, a wider footprint, more density in one spot, and that isn't that great. When we started exploring and thinking about it, we looked across the street and said, man, there's a lot of space there. Could we make this more palatable, aesthetic to the community, work for both? Let's talk to the city about the city parking lot. Is there plans for that? And here we are a few months later.
Okay, and then, the other point would be, if you looked at that parking, building a building over it, and then you're gonna add more people there, so there's gonna be more parking, and that's the concern. Is there any way in this plan that you could put parking under 2 of the buildings?
Yes.
One's gonna be raised.
Yeah.
And come up with somebody would have to do a study to find out, okay, exactly how many cars do we envision, being there? What's being used now? What would the owners have? And that was one of the concerns of the senior center. If, they were to decide to go there, what is the traffic there on a daily basis, and with the meal delivery? And so,
Right.
That's where everybody, I think, is hung up on it. The idea of building the housing for the folks in the floodplain, I mean, that's gotta happen. But it's the details on this,
Where?
parking plan and the little drawing of how it would work, and how could we actually do it, that is where we're getting most of the pushback on.
Michael, you wanted to speak to building the Carlson
Yeah,
Plaza
no,
up.
that's exactly what he said. We've thought about, adding parking on the Carlson Plaza site. There's a lot of different ways of doing this. we don't want to lose parking. We're certainly not going to do that by building over the park, but we actually want to add to the parking that be available, but yeah, for everybody. So I think there's a way of accomplishing exactly what you said by building parking. And you could even do a parking, I don't want to call it garage, but you could do a parking garage, 2 levels or 3 levels of parking, and then build your units above it. Not my idea for that parking lot, because I think you get too high then in your downtown district. But maybe on Carlson Plaza you do. There's plenty of ways to do this. But Aaron's right. We didn't want to build a 10-story, 11-story building in the downtown area, because I think it'd just be completely out of place for the downtown district. So, but there's more than one way of doing this, and I appreciate that feedback, because I had that idea already.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, just give my input. Obviously, I've been involved a lot in this. A couple of things I wanted to point out is that while we're not increasing the amount of affordable housing with this project, and this really gets to Carlson, in actuality, we are, because Carlson right now has 47 units, but only 13 are occupied, because the rest aren't, you can't occupy them. They can't be used. So when we actually do this project, or if we get to do this project, we'll really increase by 34. Not a huge amount, but still 34 more places than we have today. The other thing is, and we just talked about it a little, is it's really a commitment by the Housing Authority to at minimum keep the same amount of parking availability as exists today. And I didn't just say parking, I said parking availability, which means we have to take in consideration anything new we bring to the area and make sure to account for that so that we don't deteriorate anything, with possibly a goal to actually add parking, but at minimum, just keep it the same. The other is, as Aaron said, the base project is to take care of the people at Garden Grove and keep the amount of housing we have now, both the senior housing and the low-income housing. That's the minimum project. Now, there's a lot of opportunities which have all been discussed, from the senior center to child care to market rate housing, but that's all going to depend on the financing when we get with everything, and can it fit within the numbers, and will the payback make all that work? It may, may not. The senior center, I'd hope they would keep looking at this, because I think there's a lot of synergies there, but that's probably the biggest lift for this project, is being able to basically give them free rent, which means we have to cover it with other costs. We want to look at doing that, but it does add to the lift for the project to do, and maybe we can, maybe we can't, but we want to entertain those ideas. And then the last part is, we really are, as Aaron said, at the very beginning of the project, of getting the word out and getting the feedback. Even if we get the memorandum of understanding, there's still going to be plenty of more meetings. There'll be meetings even before then. And then there'll be real stuff. By real stuff, I mean real drawings, real numbers, people actually able to see how much parking there is, and what additional people there will be, and what the traffic patterns will be. And all that has to work. We simply don't have the answers to those questions now. But as we go through the process, which we're just at the beginning of right now, all that information will become available. And then it's up for the people who are here, or the people that are giving their feedback, to see if those questions are answered. Are you satisfied that the parking's taken care of, that anybody new we brought in is taken care of, and the traffic pattern is okay, and it all works? So really, I know there's a lot of questions from people, but we really are at the beginning. And I guess the question is, if we satisfy that, which is the biggest, that is parking, but there's other things. If we can satisfy those, then, that final decision will need to be made.
So, just one second before we go to public comment. So if we do a MOU Who does who finances that type of study?
It's not a study.
For the traffic patterns and parking study and how all of the renderings would look? Because nothing would be approved, we would still be getting feedback on if we wanted to move forward with something.
Michael, did you hear that question?
Sure. So the pre-application, will have to engage the architectural engineering, and I'm sure they'll be working with the city in terms of the any traffic studies. You know, you don't want to go too far along until you actually get funding, so you don't want to, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, but there'll be some money that will need to be spent on these type of activities just for the pre-application. And then the formal application will be a little bit more detailed. And then once funding is awarded, then you'd go into the final stages. But at the pre-application stage, we'd hope that the city would be satisfied enough to allow us to go forward with the application. Which means we're going to have to satisfy some of your concerns that we've heard previously and even today. So, my group and others that are my partners will have to pony up and come up with those funds.
Okay, so that's not on the city, is what I heard.
Right.
No.
It would be potentially, I mean, it's our responsibility in our partnership with the co-developers, essential to securing those, and his relationships with the vendors already and the work he's done makes that a little bit lighter lift.
Yeah, there'll be a formal development agreement, which would have to be, if we're awarded, that would have to come forward. And at that point, that the formal, the cities always require the developer to foot the bill for the traffic studies and any other studies that would be required to satisfy your requirements.
All right, thank you.
Nothing. I did think of another parking lot we own over north of the county office building. It might not be as big as this one, I'm not sure, but there is another parking. When I was mayor in 2018, that was the year that Wildcat Creek flooded and National Church Residences was out of their building. There even had residents, and it was just a disaster, really, for the people that lived there, because there was no housing for them to be, so they could move to other places. It was, some of them lived there. The elevator wasn't, they didn't fix the elevator, couldn't fix, it's a repair issue. And it was like 8-10 months before that elevator, and there were handicapped people upstairs. It was worst case. So I really have, and I served on the Housing Authority for 6 years and just went off in January. And so I really do have a commitment to the housing needs of our people here. And I want to be sure that we have to have as many units when this is over as we have now. And that's a criteria for me. And if you can't, you haven't spoken yet to the height. You mentioned that at the city-county meeting. Would you address that? There's a limit to how high you can afford to build, right?
It's
4.
Yeah, 5 stories, and if you're building above, it's 5. If you have a pedestal,
Yeah,
right?
parking,
Then 5 stories on top of that of wood. Now, if you go over 5 stories, then you're talking about steel and concrete, which increases the expense substantially. And I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm saying it's much easier to attain
Afford.
if we keep it under that 5 stories.
So it's the parking level and 4 stories on top for a total of 5.
Potentially 6, but I'm not confident in that we would need that height. I'm just speaking
No,
to the change of when you go from wood to concrete and
Yeah,
steel.
well, there's an affordability factor when you reach a certain plateau. But when you start talking about a child care center and a retail space, I won't support removing any housing for auxiliary uses, because we have dedicated housing now, and I'd really prefer to increase the number of housing units that we have available. When you speak about having 900 on your Section 8 housing voucher list, request list, and then you have, I don't remember how many on your 500 on your public housing. We have, and then we know the housing issues that people have that come to our community. We hear about it. So actually, we hear a lot about affordability and how it's cost too much. But this is for people who are lower income. And I'm also want to serve this project, whatever we do, to serve low income people and not middle income people. You know, it's important.
Merrick, I'll just.
But I would want to, pardon, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's an extremely important point, and that we have had the same exact public housing allocation since the Housing Authority was created in 1969. We also have, when we talk about these their contracts that National Church Residence has, those contracts don't, if they go away, which that is an option, if this, were not to be solved in a different way where the Housing Authority can assume the contract, that contract can be, taken by National Church Residence somewhere else, or HUD would take it back and we wouldn't have that. And there's market solutions for some of our housing issues in Manhattan, and people can use the market to find their space, but there is not market solutions for senior subsidized housing. The government created that program, and if we kind of not do our due diligence to keep it in our community, that goes away, and there's going to have to be somebody. There isn't really, that is a huge loss for the community if we lose those contracts.
We also have to keep them maintained so we can turn them
Right.
over, because sitting there because of ill repair or something. I know that there are housing authorities, and I'm aware of one in another city, that was moved to a tax credit, and the conditions for the residents suffered, still suffering, because the management company, they went bankrupt. There are these, and I'd like to build something into this to make sure that we would have a credible program going forward for the residents. The other thing is I'm no longer on the Housing Authority, but I am on the board of the Area Agency on Aging, and I do work on behalf of the senior citizens and the disabled through that program. And so I have a second passion also, just that, and I'll be keeping an eye on the focus to make sure that seniors are served and that commitment doesn't veer off in some strange direction. So, anyone else want to speak? Okay. At this point, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation. We've learned more than we knew. If anyone, and I assume somebody's here, there are people here who wish to speak. The city staff, do you have anything you want to add, Stephanie Peterson? Do you need an opportunity to speak?
I would say the only thing when you were talking about height is the parking lot is in a historic district. So even though there isn't a height maximum with the downtown zoning district, that would be something to take into consideration. I do believe that Aaron is going to be meeting with the Historic Resources Board at the end of September at that meeting to kind of get a feel for maybe some height restrictions, just talk about different materials and making sure that it kind of fits in within that historic district.
That's an important point. What is the height restriction in a historic district downtown?
It really just depends on the bulk of the building, what the materials look like, and making sure it fits. There's not a hard and fast, I don't believe, especially when we look at this particular zoning district that it's located in.
But 5 stories doesn't sound like it would exceed it, probably. Oh, well. We'll find out later. Okay. All right. Someone wishing to speak to the commission, and would you please come forward and sign in? And your name and address, please.
It's like one of those old shows.
I know. It's like, sign in, please. Julie Govert-Walter, I know her. She is the executive director of the North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging. It's 18 counties, and her program has a second housing authority here in Manhattan. And I don't know how the numbers compete, or I know you have waiting lists also, but I was just covering while you were writing, so
Thank you.
please
I did
take it
sign
away.
in, and I think it's readable. Yes, my name's Julie Govert-Walter. I'm Executive Director of the North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging. We're located at 4th and Houston Street in what is formerly known as the old post office. We acquired this building in 1998. And our mission of our agency is to plan, coordinate, and provide services that help older Kansans, people living with disabilities, and their caregivers live in their homes, in their communities, in our 18-county region for as long as possible. Our staff know very well the challenges faced by older Kansans and their caregivers. Our building is the hub for our regional operations. That means 18 counties. And we collaborate with communities and volunteers to provide friendship meals, sometimes informally known as Meals on Wheels, in 38 communities in our region. We also administer, as Commissioner Moore said, a Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher program that serves our region. As I stated at the city and county meeting, our agency does value senior housing, affordable housing for seniors. We do support housing solutions that are quality, congruent with neighborhood values, reflect quality land use planning, and are created with meaningful and timely collaboration with community partners and neighbors. Our agency has, as was expressed in the city-county meeting, we do have serious concerns about the unintended and unanticipated consequences of moving this proposal along too quickly. We do not believe that right now that proposal represents the best and highest thinking towards achieving a housing solution that's acceptable by all in our community. We first learned anything about this project only 2.5 weeks ago. There was nothing we knew about it before. We were among the agencies taken by surprise that a $20 million project proposed to happen right in our own backyard was being discussed. We simply do, right now, as I stand here, I simply still do not know enough about this project to support this moving forward. I would like to, but I can't do it right now. We do not believe this proposal does represent the best and highest thinking towards achieving a good community solution. We would also like to know about what possibilities and feasibilities there may be of using HUD Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher to help those folks in the Garden Grove community. Now, I'm aware HUD has all kinds of rules. I don't know them all. I give credit to Aaron and the Housing Authority for knowing what they know about this, but it does seem to me, given the lots of money being issued by the federal government, if the Housing Choice Voucher program might be part of a solution. And yes, I understand when Aaron says there are 900 people on the Housing Choice Voucher waiting list, because our agency has a waiting list of right around 200. We only have 400 Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers in our region, so it's an issue. But I guess I would like to look at that as a possibility. Housing Choice Vouchers provide people housing subsidy in the community, and there's obviously standards that need to be recognized. So I just want to bring that up. We do believe that the parking lot at 5th and Pierre Street is an important asset. It's an important asset for the city, for downtown businesses, and for nonprofit organizations located downtown. This lot provides parking for staff, for customers, parents, volunteers of the area businesses and the nonprofit organizations. We do believe that this current use constitutes the highest and best use of this parcel. And for many reasons, we think it should remain the same without additional imposed demands. And as we talk about this, we urge that consideration be given. Actually, we urge that an independent parking and traffic analysis be conducted before consideration is given to moving this proposed housing project forward. We adamantly believe this study should be done by a qualified group, not affiliated with the city or with the developer, perhaps through a contract with an independent group, perhaps affiliated with Downtown Manhattan Incorporated, the Flint Hills Regional Council, or the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We feel like this parking issue is very serious, and I don't know what I've done to make that noise.
Ran out of time.
I thank you for the commentary on what I'm saying. Anyway, and we think that those conducting the study should be responsive to the concerns raised, including.
Julie,
You're out
each
of
person-
time.
I'm on
your
break.
5 minutes.
Each person gets 5 minutes.
Oh, I am
failed
so
to say
sorry.
that.
I didn't
Thank you.
realize that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, that's enough, and I do have written comments, which I'll be glad to provide to an email to you. Thank you.
Uh-huh. You made some good points. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? I'm sure there are. Scott?
I'm Scott Seal. I serve on the board of Housing MHK, which is the 501c3 that Aaron mentioned that is a part of this project. Just wanted to address a few of the concerns brought up by the commissioners. The first of which was the question of, are there other properties that could be considered? And I think first of all, the proximity to the properties that we're already working with is the one thing that this brings a lot to, so that we can have more of a campus. Obviously, there are other possibilities, but none of them make nearly as much sense as this one. Also, if we were to get properties elsewhere, we would have to pay market rate for those properties to acquire them, and it's a significantly higher cost So the proximity is the main thing, though. Just keeping that there is important. Also, I appreciate Commissioner Mata bringing up, one of the things that I've heard a lot is that it's not actually increasing the number of available units. And I have a lot of issue with that. And as Commissioner Mata pointed out, there's 37, I think, vacant units there. But I would actually argue that of the 109, I think it is, between Garden Grove and Carlson Plaza, none of those, in my opinion, count as current units that we have, because people should not be living in them. They're not viable units, even though they exist on paper, between the flood risk and the mold and asbestos risk. So we are actually increasing by, in my opinion, by 109, the total number of available units between Garden Grove 1, Garden Grove 2, and Carlson, the available adequate units, because those are places where people should not be living right now. So I want to keep that in mind. And the last thing I really want to emphasize is that we absolutely do not want to decrease the number of units available, and we do not want to decrease the number of available parking space. And again, Commissioner Mata, I appreciate the distinction there between raw parking spaces and parking availability. The parking that is used in Garden Grove 1 and 2 is minimal. These are extremely low-income seniors. Most of the National Church residents, people have communicated that most of their tenants are not driving. They're not using cars. This is not. So while we're bringing a lot of people down here, the reality is that there's not going to be a whole lot of cars associated with them. The Carlson Plaza building already does not have very much parking at all, and it's not a parking issue. Colorado Plaza does not have very much parking at all, and it's not a park. So our plan is at best to have, or at worst, excuse me, to have a no net loss of available parking, but hopefully we will actually increase the number of available parking down in the area. That is, we understand completely, that is the one thing that we're hearing from everybody: parking, 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 parking. and we get it. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is that Aaron mentioned in his presentation that all of the entities involved in this project are nonprofits. There's no for-profit developers here trying to make a buck. But I think it's also worth noting that they're all, we had to go outside to Kansas City to get the developer that had experience in these tax credit process. But the nonprofits and the organizations that are going to be running it and operating it are local organizations. And I think that adds an extra level of accountability in that we live in the community too. And if it goes south, if something's wrong, if it ends up not doing what we want it to do, we have to face that. We have to see the people who are negatively impacted by it on a daily basis and live in it. And Manhattan's too small of a town to screw things up and not have. So I think that those local organizations having that accountability, being here on the ground, it makes it less likely that we're going to make sure that it works because we got to deal with it too. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your comments. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Hello, I'm Harold Van Deventer. I'm on the staff of the North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging. Have been for about 3 months now. But I think to harp on the recurring item of the parking, that image that's in the photo that was shown at the beginning of the meeting, there were 6 vehicles in that lot. If you go drive down there just about any time of the day, it's pushing at least, I would say, 25% occupied or higher. And it's my understanding that pre-COVID, the lot was full all the time, and including our own parking space there at the agency was being used by other people that work in the downtown area. So parking in the past has been extremely critical. I think by putting a lot below the building, the number of spaces may stay the same or potentially increase if they're made smaller, but the, quote, ownership of those spaces will be viewed by the people that live there. So even though it may be a public parking space and may be marked as public parking, I would anticipate that fewer people will be parking because they think they can't, because it belongs to the residents. Adding the further burden of the museum when it opens is merely going to increase the demand for parking. And where will those guests of the museum be parking also? So I think the net gain is the count may stay the same, but the usage may in fact tend to go down because people will interpret it, oh, I can't park under the building because it's not public. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Does anyone else wish to speak? Welcome, Gary. Gary Olds. Hi.
Need to get a rubber stamp. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Olds. I live at 3308 Frontier Circle. What a fascinating topic, affordable housing or public housing or Section 8 housing or Section 201 housing. Difficult to wrap, you said it well, difficult to comprehend all the different tentacles to it. I had the opportunity as a long time ago to serve 8 years on the Manhattan Housing Authority and learned a lot, spent a lot of time frustrated, not because of staff, or anything like that.
I would agree.
But
HUD is a
I ask a
tough
lot
task.
of,
It's a tough
I
task
ask a
task.
lot of questions when I was on that board, and I can be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, the answer was because the federal government said so, because HUD said so.
That's right.
So my advice would be, or a piece of advice is, as you go into this, and I'm not for or against it at this point, but be sure you understand that HUD will make decisions that you will not agree with and you will not understand, and you don't have a choice. That's the reality of it. I want to point out a couple other things because I'm still confused on the numbers. It sounded like at Garden Grove and Carlson, there was 109 units. I'm not sure. Maybe that was just Garden Grove. I just want to just get a clarity on that. I agree with Julie with regards to increasing Section 8 vouchers. It's incomprehensible to me. I don't really have a desire to see public housing increase. Unfortunately, the federal government doesn't have that desire either. However, the federal government does have the desire to increase Section 8 housing, but that hasn't happened in this community. To my knowledge, there may have been some increase in Section 8 vouchers. As I recall, years ago, the Junction City Housing Authority gave up their vouchers and gave them to either the Flint Hills area or gave them to Manhattan. I don't recall which it was, one or the other. So have they applied for more Section 8 vouchers? And if not, why not? Maybe they're not available, maybe they have and they've been turned down, but I think that's a solution because I think it's better to have people in housing that's part of a Section 8 program as opposed to, quote, public housing. But there has to be a balance between one and the other. And I think he said there's 232 public housing units and has been since 1969. That really doesn't surprise me. But increasing the number of Section 8 vouchers would be a good idea. As I understand it, just to clarify in my mind, does anyone know on this board, or maybe in the audience, does National Church Residents, I think that's, I'm not sure the legal name is, are they, we use the term tax, or we use the term nonprofit a lot. I'd like to narrow that down to tax exempt, which is one of the challenges we have in Riley County when you have such a large number of parcels that are tax exempt, in which 55% of the non-tax exempt pay 100% of the cost of governments and school districts, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if National Church Residents is currently tax exempt. If they are, well, they are. So what's going to happen is there's no opportunity for revenue with regards to property taxes. However, there is a caveat that exists in a contract, or did at one time, I assume it's there, still with the city. Ron, you can nod your head yes. Using acronyms, payment in lieu of taxes. Pilot, I believe, still exists that the Housing Authority chips in a little bit of money to the taxing entity, I don't know if it's county or city or both, in order to pay what one considers their fair share of property taxes, which is far below everybody else's fair share, but that's a different issue. So I would ask the question with regards to, okay, this property is going to probably end up being tax exempt. What will happen to is the property that at the end of this, I think it's called Colorado Plaza, which it may currently be tax exempt, will it get back on the tax rolls? But my main emphasis, I want to just agree with Julie in that Section 8 vouchers needs to be investigated a little more. This project sounds fascinating, but it's important, and you guys are spot on. It's very important that you figure out the right formula for the parking issue, because that probably affects a lot more people in the short term. And a solution is probably there somewhere that through the weeds that you will find. Thank you.
Right on time. Gary, thank you. Does anyone else wish to come forward and speak to this?
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having public comment today.
Your name and address,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank-
Yes, I'm Hannah Koash, and my address is 8558 Fairfield. And I am the CEO at the Boys and Girls Club of Manhattan. Nice to meet all of you. We, of course, have the facility that would be adjacent to this structure that is being discussed. We are in support of a project like this. We do just have some questions and concerns about if this would be the correct location for this type of facility, or if there have been other locations that maybe could be vetted out a little bit more. Our primary concerns with it being adjacent to the club would be security and safety, and having a proper plan going into the building of this facility. And so with security, we do have over 100 kids that are dropped off or picked up there at our facility daily. So making sure that that street there at 5th and Pierre can be open and available for families would be really important for the kids that are crossing that street and the parents who are picking them up. The second thing would be the safety and security of the actual parking area. So we would have families that would be parking in there, as well as we normally have around 20 to 30 staff members that park in that parking lot as well. So making sure that there are quality lights and cameras to ensure the safety of our staff and kids would be some really good things for us to make sure that we're thinking through. And then the last point would be just the parking situation that we have all heard plenty about. Like I said, we do utilize that space, but that would be our third concern. Our main priorities would be the security and safety for our families and kids that attend the club. More than anything, we just open conversation about this. We really have not heard too much. I was able to speak with Aaron today, and I hope that we can continue to have a good conversation about what this project could mean for our community. We definitely want to make sure that our neighborhood is enjoyed by many different types of people in our community. So just continuing to have those conversations, I think, would be really important. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah.
Does anyone else wish to speak this evening? Okay. Thank you all for your, our staff or administration have other comments? Okay. I would be interested in knowing more as you move through about the financing and the tax credit part. I want to understand that as well as possible, and I don't, not tonight, but you have, it looks like this kind of financing, and it's all interdependent, and so it's so early that it's premature to be asking, but eventually, let me just say that. So thank you very much. Ron?
I would like to have some feedback from commissioners relative to the proposal and whether or not you want to move forward to entertain a memorandum of agreement. I visited with Aaron a little bit and indicated that would be something we expect their legal staff to propose to us. We could react to, but we would like some your provision of the concept, and obviously there's a lot of details to work out, but we've been working with other parking lots which we've sold or guaranteed an investment in. Some were property tax producing, some were not. So those are kind of some of those issues. Parking, all the things that were mentioned about maintaining that lot, managing that lot. Are there considerations for the lease, the term of the lease? All of those kind of things would be important information, and will take time to articulate and negotiate with the developer and their team. And so if that's something you want us to move forward with.
Want to ask one other question, Ron? I understand, the Garden Way Apartments going to get leveled because FEMA bought that out, but normally the city'd have to kick in. And according to this plan, the National Church Group is going to pick up the cost?
That's correct. They've agreed to pay the local match for
Okay,
that
so
FEMA grant.
there's a substantial savings to the city in dollars on this.
There is.
Which didn't come out. How much is that exactly?
Do you know, Stephanie?
Yeah, the 10% local match is about $440,000.
Okay, so that's significant. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, even though, the senior board really doesn't want to move, there is the other financial advantage that if the add-on of the senior center could actually be put in here and financed, and it would be then the city could use that area over there by the post office and sell it. And that could be a financial gain to the city too, and also help with economic development. So that's some subsidiary things, I think, that have to be considered also.
To answer your question, it'll be no surprise that, yes, I want to move forward with the project. And as I said, I think we're still at the beginning, and but it's very worthwhile to pursue.
Well, I agree that I think that if we can maintain the majority of the ground level parking, then I think it's not the best idea I've ever heard, but it's a good one, I think, and the idea of getting critical mass in one place is a good idea. I would think things like they would have to maintain the parking lot so that if we're gonna, we shouldn't have to maintain it if they've got a building on top of it. And so simple things like that if there's got to be some advantage to the city. We don't have to maintain the parking lot no more. It's still ours. 50, 100 years, whatever, 99 years, whatever you guys think there. But the problem, and part of the problem with the Section 8 housing part is you got to have willing landlords to participate in it, even if there are vouchers out there. And so just not, when you say you got 500 or 900 people on Section 8 wait lists, they're waiting for a voucher, or they have a voucher and they can't find a place to live?
You're waiting for a voucher.
Okay. So yeah, I'm generally in favor of it. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things I could dislike further down the road. But I think it's worth investigating, see if we can come up with an MOU, let them get their preliminary application in. If it looks good, then we can always put the axe on it later. But if it comes generally out like this, I think I would be supportive.
So in the MOU, what exactly would it entail? What exactly are we saying?
So at this point, I'm just looking for direction for starting negotiations for a memorandum of understanding on use of the parking lot, similar to what's been conveyed, that the parking would be preserved as a public parking lot and they would lease airspace above it. And other particulars regarding maintenance and all of those type of issues that go along with a parking lot and a building above it. And whether or not there would be either a pilot that was mentioned or some other aspect of that.
I think there needs to be a lot of caveats to it. I think it was good that when Julie proposed maybe doing that traffic study before we do an MOU. But if that's not the direction we're going to be seeking, I would like a lot more caveats, like will there be enough spaces? How will all of that be preserved? How will people, if they're going to do that traffic study that was mentioned, or all the other challenges, having our current, what I've heard from was the Riley County Senior Center, the Boys and Girls Club, Pawnee Mental Health, from Julie's group, making sure they have input on the spaces and the communication is there for all of it. And if there is a way, if we are not satisfied, how do we, that we can get out of it without penalties or any kind of ramifications, that this is just a charge for them to do more studies, I suppose.
I'm willing to proceed with the memorandum of understanding with caveats, as you said, Yusha. I want the surrounding neighbors, not just the owners, but Julie owns her building and she was never contacted. So not just the tenants, I want the community surrounding it to be well informed, and so they can be supportive. It's not going to work if the community is divided. This is a big project, and it will make a big difference in that whole area, and it needs to be done right and with regard for the neighbors, kind of a thing. I think an MOU is pretty simple, just says you're gonna cooperate with each other, but there are very few details, typically, USHA. And, but I'd like to make sure that we, the commission stays engaged and involved in some of these too. I'm not interested in disrupting the senior center. I think this project is big enough all by itself, and it would have to create something that benefits the senior center. And I think just being dumped in on top of this project isn't necessarily what the senior center needs or wants. And they haven't weighed in at all, so just saying. But anyway, I would like to make sure, I think it'd benefit by bringing people together and not acting independently. Because this is for the greater good of the community. This is housing for our community. The only, other thing we have, I really am not interested in using our sales tax money for housing, because you have access to so many other buckets of funding around city, the state and federal, HUD. I know that HUD is not developing new public housing units. So you've got what you got and you'll never get any more. I don't know. Is it possible to add vouchers to Section 8 vouchers? You can answer that some other time, but or Julie can. But I don't think HUD really adds much. They add money. So they may give you extra money, you might get an extra $100,000 this year, but you don't get extra vouchers. So anyway, that's from my experience. So I am interested in the trying to maintain the status quo with parking as best we can. That there's going to be a lot of disruption in that area with these projects and the construction. And I really don't, I don't want the Boys and Girls Club to be out of business because parents can't drop their kids off. I don't want the Area Agency on Aging clients to not be able to access their building. I'm interested in whether you're going to leave the alley open. I mean, there are we all just have lots of questions, and I don't think they're answerable yet. I have no idea what housing MHK is. So I'll be interested in learning more about that. So those are my thoughts.
I just want to, I think the childcare idea, I just don't think that's going to go anywhere, because unless you're just going to do infants and you're going to keep them inside all day, that's going to be impossible to try to find green space and various things like that. So I don't think the childcare thing's going to happen. I like the idea of the senior center being in the area, and I think it would make a great quantum grouping of the whole senior service thing to have it in the area, but I just don't think it's going to blow up the parking issue, because most of the people who show up at the senior center drive, unlike most of the people who live in Carlson and Colorado. So I just don't think that building that you guys are proposing is going to work for a senior center location, but we should keep an eye out in that area if a building comes available to maybe consider putting them there and then selling off that more highly visible location there at 4th and Leavenworth there. So.
Yeah, I've got no problem with pursuing the MOU, and then, we've got all these concerns, but at least write it so it covers the base project and, doesn't deal with all these possible add-ons that are gonna complicate it.
I would mention we do have another parking lot at Colony Square. It's bigger. And there would be an uproar if that were to be in play. So not suggesting it, just pointing out. And soon the city will have no parking lots. So we're going to get rid of them in 2 years or 3 total. Anyway, thank you very much for your discussion this evening. And we'll move on with our agenda. And the next item is, why we're probably here tonight, is the budget. It'll be a continued discussion and review of the 2023 budget and discussion with a focus on city utilities, wastewater, water, and stormwater. And I think Rob Ott, Rena, you're gonna, okay. Rob caught me when I came in and said, introduce me first. So I was doing my best, but he stepped away. Okay. Hello, Rena. Rena Neal, Finance Director.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight is our comprehensive review of the 2023 budget. I will provide an overview of everything non-utilities, and then we will follow up with Public Works and Utility staff going over the water, wastewater, and stormwater funds and their needs for 2023. I would like to give a special thank you to Rebecca Doling, our budget officer, and budget analyst Lindsay Vogt for leading the budget process, and then thanks to our city manager's office for their guidance and leadership throughout this process, as well as the rest of the city staff in helping to compile what has been presented during this budget cycle. Included in your packet are detail sheets for all of the special revenue funds, as well as the bond and interest fund and the 2 new internal service funds. We have also provided a listing of the proposed 2023 CIP for you all to review in more detail tonight, and then, as requested from the last meeting, a proposed use of ARPA funds for CIP-related projects. This first slide is a recap from our July 5th meeting over the revenue neutral rate. As you can see on the screen, the 2023 proposed mill levy is 52.143 mills, which is the same mill levy as 2022. That mill levy will generate an additional $1.8 million in property taxes. And so on that third column are the projected proposed property taxes for 2023. Today, we did receive the notice of ad valorem taxes from Pot County. We do have 2 properties out there that the city owns, and then we should be receiving our Raleigh County property tax information as well. So that was something that was mentioned last meeting, that those would be forthcoming, and they've been sent out this week. On June 28th, we presented outside agency request, and sorry if it's blurry. We did present that information listed by fund. From 2020 to 2023 are our general fund requests, which are just the social services contracts. And then we have our economic development fund requests. This year is Flint Hills Area Transportation Agency. Library fund, our library employee benefit funds request, special alcohol fund contracts, and then our tourism and convention fund. Those requests were made on June 28th, Aggieville Business Association, Downtown Manhattan Inc., Manhattan Arts Center, and then Raleigh County Historical Society. On July 12th, the Chamber and CVB made their presentations, and those are presented in the Economic Development Fund as well as the Tourism Convention Fund. This next slide compiles all of the requests brought forth to date for 2023 with our general fund from last meeting, special revenue funds. All of those packets of information were included for tonight. The bond and interest fund was included for tonight's meeting as well. Enterprise funds, those will be presented after I present. And then again, the internal service funds, which we went over last month as well, at the end of last month. And so our total budget for 2023 is proposed at $191.2 million. And here is just the breakdown by percentage and then a pie chart. So again, general fund, we only had one outside agency request, SSAB. Our total budget is $39.4 million. Included in this presentation is a hyperlink of those general fund detail sheets, the revenue component, as well as all of the various departments' requests. Again, this was presented last month. The general fund revenues broken out by property taxes and sales taxes and other fees. The fund balance, as well as our sales tax and our transfers, comprise the bulk of the increase to help fund the requests. The general fund expenditures by department, this was presented again last month. The decrease in the city manager's office is again related to the IT division's budget being moved out of city manager's office and put into that IT internal service fund. This is a historical representation of our general fund cash balance with our goal of getting to $9.5 million based on GFOA recommendations. Our budget approach slide again, what we would do depending on if we were at that $9.5 million or below it. And so if revenue decrease and cash balances dip below $9.5 million, operations for the following budget year will be reduced to bring cash balance back to $9.5 million. And we've discussed this before. We monitor monthly our general fund cash balance and our revenues and expenses to see where we're at, and we make adjustments accordingly. And then if revenues are increased, then we would continue to carry out our budget as needed. Our special revenue funds, these are new for this discussion this evening. They are included in the packet. We have 26 funds, 6 are property tax supported, and 8 rely upon sales tax, special liquor tax, transient guest tax, and other state-related taxes. This table just breaks down those 14 or 15 funds and how they are funded, their budget for 2023, and the percent of the total general special revenue fund budget. So the special revenue fund budget for 2023 on that previous slide is about $70 million. And so all of these funds make up about 92% of those special revenue fund requests. Again, those that are related to sales tax, and then gasoline tax is another state tax that we receive for the Special Street and Highway Fund. I want to bring special attention to our Economic Development Fund. Our 2023 sales tax will come on in 2023 around March. For that particular fund, we are budgeting for our Flint Hills ATA request, the Manhattan Chamber's annual request, and then we are earmarking any leftover funds for Scorpion or any other potential economic development initiatives. The next set of funds are related to special liquor tax and transient guest tax, other state funding, special alcohol program, and special parks and recreation receives special liquor tax, and then our transient guest tax goes for the tourism convention. I want to highlight that particular fund. We have those outside requests that I mentioned earlier, ABA, DMI, Wolf House, as well as MAC, and then also CVB. We do have debt obligations in that fund, and then back in July, we presented a potential transfer to the general fund of $100,000. Last meeting, there was a request for additional information related to just the 2023 CIP, and so that was provided in your packet just by itself and not with all the remaining years in there. Something to draw attention to is we have budgeted in our capital improvement reserve fund those requests from the general fund, however, they are not funded. We do not have the funds available currently to do those projects. We are budgeting them in the event that we have available cash balance in the general fund to help cover those projects. So with that, that leads to the conversation about ARPA and how we could potentially use ARPA for CIP. That was a request that was made at the last meeting as well. And so we have 3 different sets of funding sources that have projects that could potentially be used for, that could potentially have ARPA funds used. General Fund CIP, they are listed here. A lot of them are related to public safety, but then we also do have a few related to Parks and Recreation. And some of those that are related to Parks and Recreation are storm drainage improvements, as well as water safety improvements. And then also we have a safety improvement for customer service, counter renovation, and City Hall. The next set of CIP requests are from the Fire Equipment Reserve Fund, and they're all fire equipment related. And then the next set is related to our bond and interest fund. Special note that we cannot use ARPA funds to pay for debt service. So if we were to fund any of these projects, we would have to use the funds to pay cash or partially fund the project. So there's an asterisk besides those projects in the bond and interest fund, as well as in the Fire Equipment Reserve Fund. There are none in the general fund. And again, that note, all of these CIP items are currently unfunded in the CIP.
While you're there for a second, so are we talking about the leftover 2 million of
Yes.
ARPA funds? Okay.
Yes. Probably back in March or April, we came to you and gave some information about bond and interest fund. And on this screen, it just lists the purpose of the bond and interest fund. We shared with you all our historical cash balances and how they have ebbed and flowed over the years. The general fund, as well as the bond and interest fund and our water fund, Jason mentioned that last month, are the funds that are highly scrutinized by our bond rating agency. And so these are the cash balances at the end of each of those years. On this screen are property taxes and mill levy over the years and how they have changed. We have kept the mill levy. We had to reduce the mill levy in order to be able to capture the same amount of property taxes for 2023. In order to move forward with our plans for our bond and interest fund strategy, we have to think about the 5 major projects that will be funded from the bond and interest fund. They are our Aggieville improvements projects, airport runway improvements, joint maintenance facility, levee improvements in North Campus Corridor. We've mentioned these as the big 5. We presented this information in the past as well. As we continue to finalize projects and go through the bonding process, that will help improve our strategy for the bond and interest fund. But currently we are estimating the various costs for each of these projects, as well as their funding sources and how they would be paid, and then the terms are reflected as well, and when they would convert to bonds. So when we're developing that bond and interest fund strategy, these 5 projects are included in there with their associated revenue streams coming in as well. And so TIF revenues as well as sales tax money would be coming in for Aggieville improvements, and we will convert those to bonds in 2025. Airport runway is about the most finalized, in my opinion, project, because it'll come to you next week. But in terms of the cost information, right now we have a very good estimate, and then we have used that to calculate how much the debt would be and the various funding sources that would help fund that debt, and when we would convert those to bonds in 2027. Our joint maintenance facility, the estimated cost about $25 million, and the various funding sources to help fund that. And we still are determining whether or not they would be 10, 15, or 20-year bonds. We have a decision to make by 2025, so a couple of years or so to make that decision. Levy improvements, $36 million. Estimated city at large, $23 million. Our surcharge fees, as well as the new 2023 sales tax, would help fund that. And then our term of 15 or 20 years converted to bonds in 2025. North Campus Corridor, 43 million. And then funding sources listed on the screen. And again, based on the final phase being bid out, then we'll start working through determining how we would structure those bonds. Some of those projects will start converting to DO bonds in 2023 with a partial interest payment due in 2023 for some of those projects. Again, our internal service funds, they're hyperlinked in this packet as well. And the purpose is to create more of a strategic process to replace our IT devices as well as our vehicles and equipment. So they are in their own separate funds for 2023 going forward. Future meetings, August 25th, we will publish the notice of tax rate public hearing and the city budget. And then, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have received our first notices as property owners for the proposed mill levy and the taxes. And then September 6th would be the public hearing on the tax rate as well as the city budget. September 20th, we will do second reading of those, and then we will publish on the October 1st. Based on last month's meeting, we've already started having conversations internally about our licenses and permit fees and cost recovery information, and we'll bring that back to you all in the fall for consideration. In this presentation, provided information about ARPA and how they could be used for 2023 and just 2024 projects. And I only included those 2 years because we have to make those obligations by 2024. Payments could be made up until 2026. We will continue to explore other revenue streams. As I mentioned earlier, we monitor monthly our revenues and expenses in the general fund to make sure that we are maintaining a healthy cash balance. And then we're working to finalize that bond and interest fund cash balance strategy. We welcome any comments tonight that will help us in preparation to finalize what will be published on August 25th.
Okay, on the, using the ARPA funds for the CIP projects, my mind on that, or view on that, was using that as a mechanism to free up funds we would have spent as part of ongoing operations and in the budget that we would have had to do outlays for those items. Because in my mind, I still want to have that 2.6 million as a reserve. So when we talked about putting together those P&L statements by the different departments, and if we saw a revenue shortfall, we would have that extra money to contribute into it. We do have statutory issues that there's only certain things we can use the money for. So in my mind, if we could use it for a CIP item, saves the money for that CIP item, so we can have our reserve. And of course, that'd be over a number of years, so it'll take some accounting to make that work. But the bottom line was trying to find a way that we could use that 2.6 as a buffer. I don't want to just spend it on CIP and then all of a sudden, poof, the money's gone. And we have a shortfall in sales tax or something, and we say we have no reserve funds in order to use for it. So again, that it was in my mind, it was using it as a mechanism to accomplish a reserve. So just want to see if everyone's on the same page I am with that.
That 2.6 million is going to have a few more restrictions than the 10 million. There's going to be oversight and responsibilities we'll have for reporting how we use that much differently than the 10 million. The 10 million can do exactly as you described. It can come back into the general fund. We can document past labor expenses and basically equate that back into the 10 million. The 2.6 has its set of rules. We wanted to give you an opportunity to look at this because this can be used in this manner. It can be used in other manners too, Commissioner. And the longer we wait, perhaps the more flexibility. But in the event you did want to use it in 13 and 4, or 23 and 24, here's a list of the projects that would qualify.
How are you funding these projects otherwise?
So these general fund projects currently are not funded. So as I mentioned earlier, they are included as part of.
So they're aspirational, or?
It was, basically our approach is as cash is available, we've prioritized our CIP. And as cash comes available over that 9.5 in the balance in the general fund, we would be approaching you all with those priorities to see if you concurred with spending that money. The fire station out east is something worth considering in the fire truck, and a lot of expenses that are going to go as a result of Scorpion. That's another project that's been identified on here that could really have an alternative source, because if you don't put it towards that, then you're going to have to bond it and debt finance it. But it's projects like that I think we're going to have to talk about for the next couple of years as it pertains to the 2.6 million.
Yeah, I guess I just don't want to use the 2.6 for fund projects as we go forward. I want to make sure to protect our operating costs. And I guess I'm looking for a little cooperation in getting that done.
In the 10 million, easy to do per the rules. The 2.6 per the federal rules are what are going to make it a little bit more of a stumbling block.
Right, I'm just hoping we can overcome that stumbling block.
Yep, I'm with you.
So, but that 10 million, you've already got plans for it too, right? So it's not like that's
Right.
still available for these projects.
Correct. The 10 million will filter back through the general fund as we've described it over the next 3 years.
And that, go back one more slide, Rena. So that's not the priority necessarily there, starting one, working its way down, is it? Or is it?
Overall,
Yeah.
these are the projects that qualify for ARPA.
Okay.
We have another list in the packet, I believe, for all 23 prioritized CIP.
Okay, there is a problem.
With cash.
Okay.
With cash, yep.
Yeah, I think with the 2.6, I think I've expressed it before, to be cautious with that. Even though there might be more restrictions, one of the things we wanted to also see was what the community needs. And I think when you speak of Scorpion and having emergency, like a fire station and such, I think some of those things I would feel comfortable using towards some of those expenses, but not in the entirety of the 2.6. We've had conversations about putting 500,000 each year aside for RCPD. We've discussed having it for social services. We've discussed it for having for other areas in the city, but we really haven't had any community input in any of that 2.6 million. So even if we use a few $100,000 for some of these, like I don't know what the EOC upgrades are. But I would feel that would fall under that emergency structure that they're talking about. So I think it depends on exactly how we want to earmark that money as it pertains to the city. I know of, like the, what is it? Drainage system at the cemetery, Sunset Cemetery, it's probably important, but I'm not sure that that's something I would approve with ARPA funds. I think that's something that, might be belonging somewhere else. So it's okay for me. I would like to discuss some of these CIP initiatives, but I don't want to use the entirety of the 2.6 million towards all of these.
It looks like if I'm adding this right in my head, you got about $8 million worth of projects there. So we could spend the 2.6 about 4 times over. So, I think it'd be nice to just prioritize that and use it. And as John said, if there's a way that other 10 million can free up some funds so that we can address what Usha said about, maybe putting an RCP reserve fund in place, whatever, out of any money that frees up, fine. But, clearly the Scorpion project, I don't think there's gonna be enough economic development money initially in that. And so if that firehouse has gotta be built, that should be on the top of the list.
And it actually could be in the 10 million too.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure we didn't trap ourselves in the 10 million where we can't do some of the 2.6. Really should be looked in total to make sure we've got the qualifying funds and making sure that we've got the most discretion possible.
Yeah, just to clarify, the 10 million is a calculation of the lost revenue, and that's what makes it a freed up source of funds for us. The 2.6 million is not viewed as lost revenue, but we received it. And there are about 7 different categories that the feds have basically said you have to use it in this manner. And I think tonight we were just trying to show you, if you've decided to go down the CIP route, these are the list of projects for the next couple of years. that you could dedicate that 2.6 to.
Right, I'm just saying if you did that 10 million from lost revenue, then you have a place where you're dividing it all up.
Yeah.
If we would have divided some of that up in reserve, was there some things that could have qualified with the 2.6 that then we could have used?
Right.
So in other words, do we trap ourselves by what we just said we were gonna use the 10 million for?
I don't believe so,
No.
but go ahead, Marina.
I don't believe so either. The 10 million slide, and I was trying to bring that up, that we presented last month and then back during the pay study conversation as well. That's just proposed uses. The main one is the ERP system. About $3 million is the estimate on that. We don't have any other funding source for that, and that would qualify under the use of that. And then we also have CIP needs in there in terms of if that was the proposed use for it, as well as helping to fund that internal service fund for our vehicle and equipment replacement. So that is what we were proposing to use those funds for.
So you can't use the 2.6 for vehicle replacement?
It all depends on like the purpose and the need. So again, fire equipment, we could like use it for that. We have to go within the guidelines of what the federal government says. We're working on our audit now, and ARPA is one of the items that is part of the single audit, as well as the airport. And so they were pleased with what we presented regarding the use of partial of the $10 million in terms of the qualifying expense. If we would have started dipping into that $2.6 million, then that compliance threshold and requirement is totally different, and then we would have had to provide additional information, documentation, and so we are not prepared as an organization to go through that part of an audit. We still need more conversations with you all as the elected officials, and as Commissioner Reddy mentioned, in terms of if there's community input. But whatever we choose to use that $2.6 million on, that will require more scrutiny and oversight and compliance. So we just need to be mindful of that. If we're giving it out to...
I'm mindful of it. I just think there's ways that this could be done. It just depends on whether you want to do it or not.
We keep presenting options, and we'll keep, I actually think over time, the regulations may relax. There's a lot of communities in the same boat.
I just don't want this money to disappear and then all of a sudden we have shortfalls in accounts.
I don't think it's going to disappear. Rena, are you saying you already presented the report, or how we're going to allocate that 10 million to the federal agencies?
So,
is that what I heard you say as far as audit and such?
So we're in our audit right now, and because we have received our $12 million, we received $6 million last year and then $6 million this year, we have to show expenses for the revenue that we received. And so the simplest expense to show is for our payroll, and we utilized our fire department's payroll expenses to justify the receiving of that money.
Okay, and if you could maybe put it in our mail folder or something, I would just like to see that for future discussions, just to see how that money was spent, should the public ask. And once again, at the beginning of our budget conversations, this 2.6, we tossed around for many potential uses. Mm-hmm. So I think this is just another potential use, is what I'm hearing. Like I said, I'm not interested in using the entire 2.6 just for CIP sources that were presented to us this evening. I think there are more discussions to be had. They may loosen the restrictions, they may tighten the restrictions, I don't know. But I also feel we haven't had any community input on any amount of money, not even 10,000, let alone 2.6 million. So I still feel we need to have that conversation and figure out how we want to allocate those funds. We may disagree, and we may still agree on some of the projects. But these aren't new to the City Commission. These types of projects have always been there. It's not as though this is the first time we're having these types of discussions. So I think there will always be a way to fund some of these things. But I don't know what the community needs are, and we haven't discussed that.
The new fire station and, well, I'm not sure about the new $1 million fire truck, but the fire station we could easily justify that as infrastructure on the new half-cent sales tax on the economic development sales tax.
Yeah,
If it wasn't already spoken for 10 times.
yeah, that's my caution. But yeah, but they would both qualify.
So basically, yeah, that $60 million is gonna go fast. And because we've got 6 million of it, or 10% or something for housing, and then a bunch of it for debt, which we're gonna have crap piles of debt we can obviously see here. And then we got all these $100,000 worth of infrastructure projects. So it's not like we're looking for projects to use the last of that infrastructure money over the next 10 years. So that's,
Yeah, and the more projects we can see privately happen in Aggieville, the more it frees up that 70% of that sales tax. Because it's dedicated down in Aggieville, but the more TIF we can develop, one project's gonna double our projections. So we can, be a little bit optimistic and say possibly more will happen and generate more revenue and relieve some pressure on that sales tax in Aggieville. Again, I think we were just trying to show you there are things out there because there's been a lot of discussion. We don't have to commit these funds, Rena, help me, 24 and spend it by 26.
Right.
So we have time, but it keeps coming up, the 2.6 million, and I think we'll continue to have discussions with commissions as we move forward in 22 and 23 until we get to 24, unless there's something that just pops out that the majority are like, that's what we want to use it for.
I was just hoping it would help offset future mill increases and, rather than, here's a nice to do project, let's spend 2 million on it. It's got to feed into the long-term, trajectory of the city mill levy over the next few years, as opposed to, let's just buy something nice and, we could have community discussions and people will bring 100 projects in here. Everything from the swimming pool to whatever, but that isn't gonna fit what I'm calculating, which is I want to see a long-term impact on keeping that mill levy low.
That $1.4 million truck, that 75-foot Quint, I think it's obviously, it's a replacement. So that's not even a new truck for a new fire station. So those are things that you're going to have to look at. You've got flexibility on the 2.6, but as far as issuing debt and paying that debt over the next 10 years or using that cash, those are the options we're laying out.
And that's a good example. That fits in with what I'm saying. So I really don't have a problem. I think we've got enough on the table right now and community input to be able to wisely allocate these funds.
I think there's a federal requirement that we have community input. Well, I think we would be remiss if we did not. Want to advocate for, and I don't know what form that takes. Maybe we offer a couple of projects and ask for community input in it, but I just don't think that we just behave in an arrogant way and plow through without the community having comment. They went through COVID also, and that's what this is, COVID recovery type money.
So relative to publishing mill levy, we need to do that later this month. Again, that sets that ceiling, and we would advocate for what we said at the revenue neutral rate, that 52.143 is what we would publish. You can still come down from that through the public hearing process and through the 2 readings of the budget ordinance, but you can't go higher than that. So that's some other direction we'd like, because we wouldn't be.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'd like to proceed.
Yeah, that was always the intent. I like the idea of the flat mill levy.
We need to proceed to publish.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. Appreciate all your staff's work.
Rob next.
Since this is kind of divided into 2 different parts, are you going to ask for public comment on 2 different parts as far as the water, wastewater, or the budget? Is that what I'm thinking? It's divided
I
into
think
2
it'd be
different-
fine. There may be people here to speak to what we just talked about, and if there is, the ARPA funds and the because we'll be moving on to the utilities, which was the main point of the budget review this evening, after all. Does anyone wish to speak to that part of the discussion we've been having about use of ARPA funds? If you do, please come forward.
Or anything.
Or anything.
Thing that Rena covered.
Anything Rena covered. There you go. Okay. Hi.
Hello, my name is Marcia Horning. I live at 3108 Carol Renee Court. I'm the outgoing chair of the Social Service Advisory Board, so don't want to talk about ARPA funds. Just wanted to give a really quick comment about the SSAB request and then answer any other questions that you might all have at this point in time. So just wanted to remind you that we asked for $574,694, and that is under that mill that we have discussed a couple of times. There seems to be a little bit of question over last year's amount, and I just wanted to ask you all that if you do decide you need to make a cutback from our request this year, I'd ask that you look back to 2020 and 2021 as a reference point. If you'll remember, last year was kind of an anomaly, so we had the K-State Child Development Center didn't request funding. We knew we'd have a couple more asks this year, so we really aren't as far out of the expected, line if you look at it as a trend year over year. So just wanted to clarify that piece of things. And as Rena was giving her presentation, I was doing math, so we might want to check it. But it looks to me that our request is about 1.5% of the general fund, which is, I think, about 0.3% of our entire city's budget. So I guess as I think about investing in some of the organizations that support some of our very most vulnerable community members, I think that's a very, very reasonable ask at this point in time. And I think that was really all I wanted to say. Any questions that I can answer?
We appreciate all the work that your committee has done, and we're looking for people to serve on your board.
Yes, we're looking for people to serve on the board. We've got a few vacancies. The only other thing I would say is we do have those 2 new agencies, and I hope that we'll be given the flexibility to go ahead and fund those as well. They certainly are serving important community needs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Scott, you're gonna.
Thank you. Again, I'm Scott Seal. In this capacity, I serve on the Special Alcohol Advisory Board. And I just wanted to rise to discuss the board is formed, as you guys well know, by state law, funded with money that is not coming from the state general budget, and that can only be spent on organizations that do drug and alcohol abuse and prevention with a specific emphasis on children. And I would ask you to my understanding is state statute provides the board with the sole discretion to allocate those funds with the advice and consent of the city commission. And I would ask you to honor the allocations that we have put in front of you. They have been given great consideration by our board, which is a board that made up of people who volunteer their time to make these decisions for and how to use our tax dollars to have a beneficial effect on the community. We strive to be impartial in our determination when we consider a proposed funding organization. We are looking at, is this organization working to work with drug and alcohol abuse and prevention? And have they gone through the necessary steps to get this funds? And if the answer is yes, and they are doing that, and they are doing it effectively, and we have denied funding from a couple of organizations in the last couple of years because we feel like they were not doing it effectively, or they were a duplicative service, or one of them that was not even operating in our community anymore, through no fault of their own. But so we really strive to be good stewards of these funds, and to distribute them in a truly impartial way without regards to our personal feelings for whatever it is that they're doing. And I would just ask that as a commission that you honor the time and effort that we've put in. In my 3 years on this committee, and in my almost 20 years of watching this commission closely, I have never seen, and no one that I've ever talked to has seen a commission go in and line item strike any funding allocation made by the Special Alcohol Board. And I just ask that that tradition continue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Does anyone else wish to speak this evening about the budget generally? Okay, thank you. I'll close that part of the public comment period and move on to the utilities. And I think that Rob Ott, the Director of Public Works, will lead us with this presentation, but we'll be talking about the water, wastewater, and stormwater systems that we have here in the community and the budget for the future. So, Rob Ott, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I know that we have a 9 o'clock deadline with the published meeting for tonight, so I'll be as brief as possible. See? Just say yes and we're done. Okay.
So you're going to enforce it? Is that what you're saying?
So
what's important?
I'm just going to highlight some things real quick. I'm just going to, I'm shocked so many people want to hear about water and sanitary sewer and stormwater tonight. They're still in the audience. Normally it's just staff. This is accomplishments from our utility folks on the sewer maintenance for 2021. Listed above, while these aren't exciting, new, shiny projects, they are critical and important for keeping sanitary sewer in order to flow to the city of Manhattan, to our wastewater treatment plant. And with that, there are day-to-day tasks that require us to complete inspections of the sanitary sewer, cleaning our sewers that don't pass the visual inspection, or the acoustic testing that we also do as well. That's the amount of lineal feet that we cleaned out in 2021. The other thing that Randy will talk in, oh, that's a big number. That's not right. Apparently, Rob cannot type correctly this evening. On utility one call, Randy had a number of slides in his presentation, had some comments in his inter-office memo, and I don't want to steal any of his thunder, so he's going to talk about that. At the wastewater treatment plant, those individuals there, the lab techs, the operators, the mechanics, they take a great deal of pride. A number of you have gone out to the wastewater treatment plant, and I thank you for it. Again, it's not the new shiny stuff that everyone gets excited about, all except for when you don't follow EPA and KDHE regulations. There's a city just downstream of us they're in trouble, and kind of became a little bit of an embarrassment for that community. Our community, almost 1.7 billion gallons of effluent was treated at the plant. We applied just over 12.3 million gallons of biosolids. Again, I want to thank the City Commission for your leadership and your strategic thinking for the purchase of the land that allowed us to expand our biosolids farms. That kind of secures our future as the community continues to grow and so forth. This happens to be both the water treatment plant as well as the water distribution folks. I won't belabor any points or any of these, just kind of highlight the almost 2.5 billion gallons of water that was delivered to our customers. Similar to the wastewater treatment plant, these folks take a great deal of pride. They also have the same EPA, KDHE requirements. Our greatest challenge, and Randy's going to talk about this a little bit in his presentation for the water treatment plant, is the availability of chemicals, the quality of the chemicals that are, as we seek alternate sources, and the cost of those chemicals, okay? So he'll highlight that a little bit. And as always with limited staff, they work extremely hard. A number of you have commented to me in the past about water main breaks and how hard those individuals work regardless of what the conditions are, whether it's -15 or 108. The levee project, Rena talked about this a little bit earlier, is in full swing. Brian's going to highlight some relief well installation, new gate well installment. We just ask that the community continue to be patient. I know some of you love to run on linear trail and bike, and the contractor is progressing. Again, this is a significant project that's been in works ever since I started the city in 2005. It'll continue for the next 2 years. The only remaining component is the railroad that has not been bid yet. I want to thank Bill Heatherman and Brian Johnson for all their hard work with the Corps of Engineers as well as UP Railroad. I believe we're getting much closer to an agreed upon design and costs much less than our worst fears. So to their credit, they've been working very hard between both those parties to come to a solution, and hopefully we'll be able to share that with you soon. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Randy, if you want to come on up, and I'll let you get started. And you have 5 minutes. So anyways,
I can do it.
So anyways, uh-oh.
Where you going, Carla?
Okay. I'm sorry, I should have done a better job. Randy DeWitt is Assistant Director of Public Works for our Utilities Division for water and wastewater. So, Randy?
Welcome, Randy.
Hello, friends. Glad to be here.
We haven't heard from you for a while. I do
Rob.
actually come down your road to visit, but I usually turn around because I'm really looking at the construction about every other week. The joint maintenance facility.
There you go. Just hit refresh.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rob, for that introduction. I will try to go as fast as I can, get through some of this stuff. So, as usual, another wonderful evening of me presenting at the end, trying to get done as fast as I can. All right, so I'm just going to start with the wastewater fund, give you a 2022 update. So this is year-to-date data. So we started with a budgeted beginning fund balance of 3.4 million, but the actual was about 4.4 million. So we started the year on a good note with an extra $1 million in the cash reserves. Sales and consumption, as you know, sales are based on mostly the winter quarter average for our residential customers. In the past, we've talked a lot about how generally water use has been on a decline for the past 10 years due to more efficient appliances and plumbing fixtures. Well, it looks like maybe that's starting to flatten out a little bit finally. So winter quarter average was up, I would say negligible or slightly. But if you look at our revenues for year to date, we are up about 5.7% from the same time period last year. So that number represents January through June. So we raised rates last year 3%. So this is indicative of a little bit higher consumption as well. Expenditures, I'm glad to say that, through year to date, we're looking really good on expenditures. So every one of our divisions are under budget. Although we do have, obviously, our market adjustments that we made for employees' salaries at the mid-year. Also, we should have, unfortunately, probably just under $200,000 in savings for personnel because our sewer maintenance division is understaffed right now. Rob talked about a lot of the stuff they do in his opening. Unfortunately, we're way behind on our sewer maintenance because out of the 11 staff members we have funded, we've only had 4 for most of the year. So we are actively trying to find a contractor that can help us with some of our maintenance and get caught back up with some of those savings. So But the good news is we do have some applicants starting to flow in, and so we should have a couple of vacancies filled within a month or so. Looking at the 23 budget, so as far as expenditures go, no new personnel were requested for our primary functioning divisions. You've seen that we are adding or looking to add HR staff and finance or budget analyst staff, as well as we'll probably be adding an assistant director for the joint maintenance facility. So those salaries are split between the utility funds, so those are included in what I'm showing here as salary adjustments for 2023. It says market salary adjustments, but that does include everything, including those new positions. Of course, Rena talked about the new IT and fleet charges. I say new because they're new to our annual budget, understanding that some of those are overhead costs that we've always incurred through the general fund transfer and the asset purchases that now we're paying for those up front. So they do have an impact on the 23 budget and our fund balance. And just as a reminder, in our forecast for both of these funds, we traditionally project 3% rate increases every year. What we're showing here for the wastewater fund is that we are going to recommend that 3% rate increase, so no real deviation. And I'll show you our fund balance charts here in a second. But we're projecting that our year-end balance is going to be $5.2 million, and that's about that's about $800,000 more than it was at the beginning of the year, so that's good. And our projected fund balance in 2030 is going to be about $10 million. So here's the fund balance chart that I show every year. Obviously, we're still in the current year. We're still well below those recommended levels, but with some of the rate adjustments we've made recently, obviously we're trending to where the projected fund balance is going to meet or exceed recommended levels very soon. Well, not very soon, but by 2030, which is kind of a target year for us. We always look at customer impacts when we do rate increases. So this is the average monthly residential bill for the 7 primary customer classes that we analyze. I always focus on the top 2, those residential low commercials, low usage being 2 units of water usage a month and the average being 7. They make up 80% of our customer base, so I focus on those. And you can see from the 3% increase, you're looking for that residential low, you're looking at about 90 cents increase, 98 cents of an increase on their monthly bill, and just under $12 for their annual impact. And for that residential average customer, $1.84 per month increase and an annual increase of $22 roughly. We always like to do a municipal comparison too, to find out where we're at compared to our peer cities. And caveat this time of year, as always, I don't know what these other cities are going to do, so every other city here listed is representative of their 2022 rates. The ones I have listed here for the city of Manhattan are current in this red, with an average residential monthly bill of $45.93. Again, this is that 7 unit per month customer, and then the 3% increase would put us here. Again, we're going to stay right in the middle of the pack. Again, like I said, these are first-class cities plus the largest second-class cities in Kansas. I always reiterate, these aren't the reasons that we make decisions on what our rate should be, but it's always good to show that we are where we're at in comparison to our peer cities. So any questions on the wastewater before I go to water? Okay. So on the water side, if you remember, Commissioner Mata, you weren't here for this, but we did a corrective rate increase in 2021 for 2022. We had the goal of adding about $1.4 million of revenue to the water fund on an annual basis. So at the beginning fund balance for this year, we were looking at a budgeted fund balance of $5.6 million. Actual was, so that $6.2 million, I have to say, is incorrect. When I checked the data this morning, I pulled that from the wrong spot. It's actually $6.5 million. So again, we're ahead of where we thought we were going to be. So we're starting the year in a good position. Sales and consumption, year to date, we are projecting that we will meet those revenue projections. We are entering we're starting the 3-month period where water sales can make or break our budget. So it's been up and down, but looks like with the weather we've seen lately, we're probably going to be having some pretty significant revenues coming in the next month or so. But year to date, these are January through June numbers. We were up 15.5% in revenue from the same period last year. That $1.4 million of additional revenue was about 16% more revenue, so we're close to that target number. Consumption, we're over our 10-year average for this first 6 months of the year, and right now we're about 9% higher than we were this time last year. I did see the numbers for January through July, and that number has dipped down to 1% over last year. So again, this is the time of year where we start watching that really closely because it'll make or break our year. Expenditures, again, everything to date, every division is under budget or should be at budget. Rob mentioned one of the biggest hurdles that we've had to hop over this year is our water treatment plant chemicals. Significant increases to those at 40% or higher. So those primarily consist of lime we use in our softening and hypochlorite or sodium hypochlorite, which one of our disinfectants. We can't do anything about the disinfectant. We have to hit a certain target rate depending on how much water we make. We are already using the lowest cost source, so we can't really do anything about that. The lime, we have scaled back use a little bit, so we're trying to be as conservative as we can with those materials in an attempt to save some costs. There really is no major treatment ramifications other than the water's going to be a little harder, but we're still putting out good water, and most people won't notice a difference. So we've been able to dial that back some. So we're looking good there. All right, so this is the fund balance actually I'm going to move forward here a little bit. We're going to look at the 2023 budget first. So again, expenditures. I say we really have no new employee requests. I'm showing a utility locate specialist, but the caveat there is the utility locate divisions, they have a separate funding source besides water rates, although they're within the water fund. And we're going to talk a little bit about locate fees here in a minute. But other than the HR position and the finance or the budget analyst position, again, I have no new requests for employees at the water plant, distribution, et cetera. And so there we can see the impacts of salary adjustments for the pay study, IT and fleet charges, and then water treatment plant chemicals. As usually we're about $700,000 a year. We're going to bump that budget line item to a little under $1 million for next year. So in total, we're looking about just under $1 million in new expenses for 2023 water budget. And so backing up now over to that fund balance chart. This is a little different than what I showed you guys in November of last year. Actually, what Rob showed you because I was out with COVID. But that corrective rate increase put us in a position where our projected fund balance in the out years was meeting or exceeding the recommended levels. So you didn't see any red here in the out years. What you're seeing here is with a 3% increase, which is what we project in our forecasts, and those extra costs for not only 23, but projecting them through the out years, this would be the ramifications. Basically, we're a little less than what we would like to be in the out years. Again, we're not meeting recommended levels now, but we're trying to change that. So what we've done is we've looked at a couple different options for what rate increases would be necessary in order to get that fund balance to where we want it to be in the out years. And so I looked at a 6% increase, which can be seen in this fund balance chart. And then I also looked at a different option to increase the rates 4% this year or for the next 4 years. So what I'm going to present to you is really a recommendation that we increase the rates 4% for 2023, with the caveat that we're going to update our fund balance projections for the next 4 years to be 4% increases instead of 3%. But we all know that we look at these every year. We could have a high revenue year, and we can bring those out years right back to 3% or less. So that's why I primarily chose that 4% option to present to you folks. And so with the 4% recommended increase, we're looking at a projected year-end fund balance of $7.7 million. That puts us right where we're supposed to be, about $1.5 million more than we were last year. And our projected 2030 fund balance is still at $10.5 million. Again, that puts us really close at what those recommended fund balances should be. Again, customer impacts, I'll focus on the same two categories as I did in wastewater. Impacts to a low residential customer is 83 cents a month, just under $10 per year. Our average residential customer, their monthly bill is going to increase by $1.41, annual by just a little under $17. Same municipal comparison showing current rates, a 4% increase and a 6% increase. We are still very affordable compared to our peers, so we'll stay right in the middle of the pack. And that is with the assumption that the other cities, they're going to raise rates. It's inevitable. I've talked to a couple cities recently that were inquiring with me what we were doing. I think everybody's going to be making some adjustments to the rates this year due to inflation. So that's really it on the water and wastewater rates. And I got some other charges I want to talk about, but I'll stop here for a second if you have some questions on some of the stuff I've talked about.
So on the water fund, besides just the providing water, the big expenses out of the water fund, there's a bunch of money going to the levee, or not? Some?
Yeah, we definitely have a fair share going to the levee project, the joint maintenance facility. Yes.
Is there any other big thing like that that's artificially raising, it's raising the rates higher than you would just for the water itself? Or are those the big two?
No, I don't think so. I mean, everything else in the CIP for us are needed projects. We've got some very large projects. I would think really the only one that qualifies partially is we've got some improvements for the lime sludge lagoons, which they're only happening, and they're kind of related to the levee project. Bill's here, he's one of our stormwater engineers. There's a project to improve the ditch that goes along TCB, the north end of TCB, that conveys to the Hayes encasement wet well or gate well. And so they had to make improvements upstream to this channel. Well, that had impacts on our lime sludge lagoon, so we were going to make modifications to the lime sludge lagoon. Well, that triggered a response from KDHE, and so now we're ended up with a $3.5 million project, which we thought was probably going to be about $500,000 worth of improvement. So, and it's all centered around making the lagoons non-discharging. So they're equating us with industrial type lagoons. When in the past, for the past 50 years, those lagoons have been discharging to that channel, clear effluent. And so they're making that change. So that one would probably qualify.
Okay.
But it'll be funded through a low-interest KDHE loan. I had originally hoped that would be something that would be eligible for some of the federal funding, but in reality, that federal funding has turned into just more access to low-interest loans. So it's not free money, it's low-interest money. So that's, I think, the only one that I would qualify for what you're asking.
Commissioner Hassel, if I remember correctly, when we did the surcharge, I believe we did a one-time rate above our normal rate increase for the levy. When we presented that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years? 3%. So we had presented that, and that was approved at that time. The joint maintenance, I believe, is in the capital improvement detail forecast that Randy and Rebecca work on. So
future increases will pretty much just be for the production and distribution of water versus any other big capital projects.
Other than what?
Big lagoon, the lime.
Yeah, and Rob and Brian know a lot more about it, but the investments that the utilities are making, we get credits for that on the overall project levy cost. So it does actually have a benefit to the overall project, I believe, for us to
But once again, it's one of those things where it was a change in the interpretation of the rules or something, not necessarily, it was not necessarily a new mandate. Like you said, they're lumping us into something that's a little different than what we used to be.
Yep.
That's the thing that drives me crazy.
Yep. And your city manager, I've spoken to Senator Tom Hawk. I've talked to Representative Senator Carlin about this issue at some of my professional groups that I'm involved with now. And unfortunately, we haven't been successful, but we'll continue to, I guess, beat that drum, so to speak, to press those issues for that low interest loan.
There was supposed to be some principal forgiveness in some of with the new federal money. There's still a chance that there will be, but they've really kind of filtered it down to smaller communities. And so they kind of look at your community size and your budget size and make a judgment on you can afford it. So we're not going to give you that principal forgiveness. Each state has been given the leeway of making their own rules, so there's, I would say, some of that's still to be determined, but there is a chance that it's probably not going to help us on that project, but it might help us on our wastewater treatment plant project.
Potentially. Yeah. Anything else? All right, quickly, I'll just go through some of the other charges. System development charges are our right to connect fees for a new customer, new connection. Traditionally, we increase those as we increase rates. From an administration perspective, we work with risk reduction on collecting those fees. We like to keep them equal on the water and wastewater side. It's just convenient that way. So instead of increasing the water system development charges 4% like I'm recommending, we're going to keep that at 3%. So they'll be equal on both the water and wastewater side. Meter installation charges, we updated those last year for this year. So the cost of a standard residential 3/4 inch meter is now $1,900. We don't really see any need to increase that. Any meter that's greater than that, we charge at cost. So we're not going to adjust those fees, but I am proposing that we add some language to the ordinance that would give either the director or Ron some flexibility in the mid-year to adjust those fees if there's been a substantial increase in material prices. We don't make money on this, we're just trying to recoup our costs, but we'll have to work with the city attorney's office to make sure that we can add that into the ordinance. Kansas one-call fees. So this is one of the other big ones that Rob mentioned. Substantial increases in the amount of underground infrastructure that's happening in our rights-of-way and easements, and just projects in general. So over the years, we've always adjusted this fee. This is a one. You get this fee on every water bill, so 12 times a month for every customer, and those revenues go specifically to the utility locate program, which we're required by the state to participate in, since we're a municipal utility. So we've seen an increase of over 40% in the amount of locate tickets we've had to do since 2018. Not only are the quantities increasing, but the area of each locate is increasing. So, Evergy, Kansas Gas, all the communications companies, they're just putting in underground lines like crazy in this town. And add to the fact that when they call in for a locate, they've got 14 days to complete the work. And if they don't complete it by then, we have to go and locate it again. So that's compounding the issue. So we have to go back and relocate things twice, sometimes 3 times. So we added a third locator a couple years ago when we increased from $1 to $1.15 per bill. We've had to add a 4th locator this year. We didn't do a mid-year adjustment to the rate, but we are proposing to increase that fee, that once per month fee, to $1.50. So that would put revenues at about just under $300,000 per year. Our expenses for this division is about $290,000 per year. So we got a little bit of room. The only thing it doesn't fund is vehicles. So vehicles are purchased just out of the water and wastewater fund in general. And I've got some charts to show you if you're interested, but in the interest of time, take my word for it. It's a lot of work, and we're getting behind sometimes. So the last one is just reiterating something we went talking about.
Sorry to interrupt, but that fee increase on that one, and you mentioned it was 2018, since then they've gone up that. Has that fee been $1.15 since?
I think it's 2 years. So we increased it from $1 to $1.15 a couple years ago. And we look at this about every 2 to 3 years. We'll run this division in the red for a few years, and then we'll adjust it, run it in the black for a few years, and then I'll run in the red, and then we'll adjust it
Okay,
as
so
necessary.
went about 2 years ago from $1 to $1.15.
Yeah,
And
but
now
this is a big one because just the sheer amount of work we've had to do, plus salary increases through the pay study.
Yeah, I just wanted to know the last time.
Randy, one more question there.
Yep.
So the water customers are paying for Evergy and Kansas Gas to go out and do the locations so they can do their work, essentially, right?
So no, I think if I understand your question right, each utility contributes to the one-call fund. So
Okay.
we just pay because we're a water and
Okay.
sewer provider.
So as a homeowner, since Kansas Gas just tore up my yard to replace some of the piping.
You're paying that
I
on your
I
gas
paid them, I paid them on the gas bill. I'm paying for that location through the city because of the water line going across my property. And I probably had to pay Evergy a locate fee also simply because they're a utility.
Yeah, but just remember, when you call that locate in, you don't pay a dime.
At that moment.
So the people that are using it, they're not the ones that pay for it. So the contractors, it's a free service to them. So they don't care if they got to call it in 3 times.
But statutorily, us as a utility provider must go out and locate it. Again, it's protecting our investment in our infrastructure. And it's not just water and wastewater, it's stormwater, traffic signals, Aggieville power lines, anything that we don't like to replace.
Well, and we've made significant investments with our right-of-way permit program too. So all in the interest of protecting our infrastructure in the right-of-way, so. Okay, last item real quick is high-strength waste fees. We charge several industries in town that discharge very high-strength waste. It costs more to treat it, so they pay a surcharge. A couple years ago, we recognized that we only had about a 50% cost recovery for those. These are like BRI, Vet Med, when Tallgrass was in town, their brewery, high BOD, high total suspended solids in their waste. So last year, or 2021, we were given the instructions to phase this in over 2 years to get to 100% cost recovery. So last year, we increased rates for 2022 to achieve 75% cost recovery. This table here shows that we will increase to, it's a $1 per pound. It's a complicated formula, but this will get us to 100% cost recovery for that limited select customers that we said that we incur extra costs to treat their high strength waste. So, and yeah. Any other questions?
Randy, thank you. If there are no more questions, I'd like to address the commission. We are approaching 9 o'clock, which is the expiration date. It would be good if we could have a motion to extend for 30 minutes, because each of the presentations, I understand, are 30 minutes long, and we still haven't heard from Brian he's city engineer, and talking about the stormwater fund.
I move we extend adjournment till 9:30.
I'll second if we can have a 5-minute break.
That means you only get 25,
Make it
right?
5 minutes.
Okay, I think I'll just declare we're going to take a break, and we'll be back at the time.
Let's vote on the motion.
Oh, vote on the motion. We have a motion and a second. Jared, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse,
Yes,
Commissioner Hadisall.
Yes.
5
Motion
minutes.
passes.
So maybe 9:05, that'd be 7 minutes. I think that's a good idea.
3 minutes. I think I could have been done.
Love engineers.
Okay.
Or I can just make it flash like at home on the VCR, one of the two.
We need an alarm.
Okay.
You gonna say something?
Yeah. Mayor, Commissioners, this is Bryant Johnson. He's the city engineer for
Nice to meet all of you.
City of Manhattan. And this evening, he's going to be covering the Stormwater Fund update.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Brian Johnson, City Engineer. I got the stormwater update tonight. I'm batting cleanup, so hopefully we can hit a grand slam and everybody around the bases and go home. So with that, let's go to the opening page. Agenda for tonight. So I got some background information. We're going to talk about the flattening and how we got the balance in the fund to be where it is today, because it's actually in pretty good shape. We're going to talk about the anticipated current and 5-year fee structure. Again, talk about expenses and revenues for this year, which came in pretty well. We're going to talk about our comparable cities, like Randy was talking about. Then we do have 2 policy things we want to bring to your attention because we are working on them. Hope to have some comments out to consultants here within the next 30 to 45 days and some developers to talk about our fee in lieu program. If you recall, we did a fee in lieu in the downtown watershed for the M1 and M2 apartments on North Manhattan. After some modeling in the downtown watershed a couple years ago, we came to the conclusion that really detaining water in the downtown watershed, while it does help, you can get a lot better bang for your buck if you get into a fee in lieu program and build the CIP and build the infrastructure that's in the CIP that needs to be built. That's how you're going to lower water levels in the downtown watershed. Then we also got a tributary stream and detention policy that we had an RFQ out for. Selection committee met today and we've selected somebody. Letters will be going out to consultants, but that one is really to talk about a couple of different things. One is the detention policy. We have about 127 detention ponds in the city. About 110 of those are maintained by HOAs. The city maintains about 10 of them. They're 30 years old. Obviously with infrastructure, age is not a good thing. They're getting to the point where they need some attention, and so we either need to start contacting HOAs and tell them to go out and clean those, and that's not a small bill. The one we cleaned that the city owned a couple years ago was north of $50,000. Or we need to talk about a policy for the city to maintain them and then what that looks like, what that policy looks like. So we've got that coming back, and then also the tributary stream, the Little Kittens, the Seacos, the Prairie Lakes, all of those streams. Right now they're HOA maintenance. You have to go back and cut down the trees and undo the log jams and all of the things that happen on natural streams that meander as they're supposed to. Right now, that's all HOA maintenance. And that's a lot to ask of HOAs to go out and clear 4, 5, 6 foot tree dams. So we're gonna hire a consultant. They're gonna look at what other cities do, give us some information, some insight into what other cities do on these kinds of situations, and then we'll come back with some recommendations in next spring. So again, real quickly, review of the community survey. This is a oldie but goodie. I like showing this one a lot. This is from the 2018 community survey. Obviously, stormwater infrastructure. The higher up you go in the graph, the higher the priority it is to the general public. The farther left you go on the graph, the more dissatisfied you are. Right satisfied, left dissatisfied. So obviously, upper left is not a good quadrant to be in. And that's unfortunately where our stormwater infrastructure sits today. Again, through the flattening program, we've identified quite a few CIP projects we're going to get to. Again, the 5-year flattening program, this was the last year of it. The goal was to get to $755 per equivalent unit for both commercial and residential. For those of you that have been on the commission a while, you remember when we started the flattening, commercial was paying about 60 cents on the dollar compared to residential. So commercial was getting about a 40% tax break or fee break. Maintenance of the fund now, that the balances are between the two or equal. We've achieved that equality that we've been after for 5 years. Really, maintenance of the fund is the big goal now. Review of 2022 financials. Revenue actually slightly exceeded expectations. That's happened every year since we started the flattening, so that's a really good sign for the model. The model was conservative. We, certainly want to exceed expectations, and it's done that every year, so we're quite happy about that model and how the accuracy is on the model. 2022 expenses are meeting expectations after several years of higher than anticipated expenses. Most of that was personnel. As we moved personnel into the Stormwater Fund, Stormwater Fund was paying for about 10 people at the beginning of flattening. Now it's up to about 19. So after several years of growth in the personnel, that's stabilized this year. So we have 19 FTEs in Stormwater this year like we had last year. And so those expenses have flattened out a little bit, and they've actually been what we anticipated this year. So that was really good news. So this is our fee structure as we look out to 2026. Remember that $2 of that $9.55 and $2 of everything in 2022 and 2023 go to that levy surcharge. And remember the surcharge, the bond payment and the surcharge need to equal. There is no additional money coming through the surcharge to the fund. The goal is to make them equal. We won't know the exact surcharge, obviously, until we bond it, because we don't know the interest rate, we don't know the term, we don't know our final cost. We're still under construction. But as we look in the crystal ball now, we think that that $2 surcharge is good for this year and next year. 2024, we're hedging our bets a little bit just because construction will be done, and we programmed 25 cents in 2024 to cover that end of construction in case there's any. You got the Union Pacific Railroad we're still negotiating on in case there's any extra costs. To date, things have been going pretty well. We're right on track, right on budget, but we have another 18 to 24 months of construction yet. So we did plug an extra 25 cents in 2024. So that's the fund as we go into the out years. Obviously the purple is the beginning fund balance of that year. The red is where we should be based on the cost of services study. If you recall, a couple years ago, this graph went negative in 2027, 2028. We were going to bounce checks in 4 years. So we have stabilized the fund. A lot of that is thanks to your leadership and going down the flattening program and going through that program. Obviously, now we don't have any negative. Obviously, we don't meet expectations or recommended fund balances as we go into the out years, but those are several years away. So our fee table, again, $9.55 is what we're paying today for Manhattan. Gets us kind of in the middle of a pack for the other peer cities. As we go down them, you go from small business to huge business. We did get some data in just a few months ago. So 50% of our businesses pay less than $50 a month. So as you look at this graph, 50% of our businesses are in these two categories. They're paying less than $50 a month. 75% of our businesses are paying less than $100 a month. So 75%, 3 out of every 4 businesses are in these 3 categories right here. Then you get to a larger and then larger, obviously, AIB size. When you get to that size of a customer, they're in the top 10%. So they are in the 90th percentile. So only 10% of the companies in Manhattan pay more than $500 a month. Top 2%, now you're starting to talk the really large, very large paved areas, Kansas Farm Bureau. Top 2% pay $1,000 a month. So you're talking the top 2%, about 15 companies in the entire city. And then the top 1%, the Walmarts of the world, the Menards, the Targets, they're paying about $1,500 a month. So we wanted to get a good cross-section on this graph of what the different fees are, but just remember when we talk about these fees, 3 out of every 4 businesses is in this category. So again, the levy surcharge, we want the surcharge revenue to equal our bond payment. We've looked in the crystal ball, thanks to Rena and Rebecca. They've given us an idea of what they think that bond payment is going to be. We've set our surcharge revenue to that for that first bond payment in 2025. Right now, we've got a $2 in 2022. 2023, we're not recommending any increases in the levy surcharge. We are looking at a 25% increase in 2024 may be needed. So I want to preface that because we have a lot of work to do with Union Pacific Railroad. We have a lot of work to do with our contractor. We've got a lot of, as Randy was saying just a minute ago, we have a lot of refunds coming back for easements, in-kind services, stuff that we've done that the Corps is going to give us credit for. So we have a lot of that coming back. Auditors are going to go through all of that. Accountants are going to go through all of that. We'll know more over the next 12 to 18 months. So just really quick, going through a couple of projects quick that are currently under construction. This is the levee project. This is the borrow pit down on Temple Lane. Obviously, quite a bit of borrow material to raise the levees needed. This is our new sandbag, or this is actually not a new one. This is a rebuilt one down on South Manhattan in Wildcat Creek. So this is a sill that, should we get a flooding event, we'd have to build a sandbag gap here. So you'd have to lay sandbags on that flat surface there and start building up. This is one of the relief wells, one of the, I believe, 17 relief wells along the project. So this was, when we talk about the levee project, we talked many times about how it's not just raising the levee. We're not just putting dirt on the levee. We're reinforcing the levee. We're doing structural reinforcement to it so that it is stronger, not just taller, it's stronger. This is one of those things that makes it stronger. Levee relief wells take poor water pressure from the dry side, pump it back up over to the west side so that we don't get the under seepage boils that we get when you have a levee raise event. In '93, there was a lot of boils along the levee. That was one of the things that was noted in the plan was there's a lot of seepage, there's a lot of issues. If we build it taller, that only creates more water pressure that's trying to get down under the levee. So that's what these are for. These are recommended to take care of that poor water pressure. Real quick, future CIP. So this is a project that Randy was talking about. This takes stormwater from basically everything north of Bluemont, comes through this north channel, and it'll run up next to IHOP and then out through the Casement and Hayes Gatewell. Remember, that was a betterment, very expensive betterment. Once that betterment's complete, we'll be able to take more water through that gatewell. That gatewell was a 96-inch pipe. We're building double 10 by 10 boxes. You're talking magnitudes of 5-6 times.
With a gate?
Yep, 2 gates actually. It's got a flap gate on it, and it's got a drill down gate on it. On top of that, not only that, currently our gate structures, when we maintain them, we physically have to have somebody stand there and hold it up. Extremely dangerous because there's a guy in there greasing everything, cleaning it. These new ones lock open. So not only is it better safety-wise for seepage, it's also better for our crews because standing under a 25,000-pound gate well kind of makes you nervous. So we also have designed in some pumping areas. So a couple years ago when we had to pump over the levee in 2019, if you remember, we had tractors sitting out there in a field and half stuck. These now, we built the top structure that we can access those, pump up over the levee. Setup's much quicker, tear down's much quicker. It's a lot safer, it's a lot more efficient. So that's another thing. Not only did the levee get improved, we've also improved a lot of maintenance items that our crews fight with every day. So this is the North Channel project, again, carrying stormwater. Basically everything north of Bluemont now will go north through that channel, through the Casement Hayes Gatewell, out to the Big Blue. South Manhattan Interceptor, we're negotiating some design contracts on that. That's another very large box project, runs from Wildcat Creek up North Manhattan. Eventually it goes all the way up to Aggieville, and it gets to Aggieville to 14th and Anderson, and it picks up all that overflow water from 14th and Anderson. That watershed actually starts at the soccer stadium. So if a drop of water hits at the soccer stadium, it eventually finds its way down to 14th and Anderson. That's how huge that watershed is. So there's a lot of water coming there. Obviously, I'm sure you've all seen pictures of that area flooded. When it floods, it overflows, it goes down Bluemont, then it runs all the way down to Bluemont to 4th Street, compounds other problems that we have down there. So that project, we're under a design contract. We hope to have construction in 2026. Then Casement Road, so that was a 2024 project. We've got the 30% design. Initial cost estimate is around $8 million. We have $2 million budgeted in the stormwater project, or in the stormwater portion of that project. Wyatt has been generous enough to dedicate some trail money for the trail that would go on the west side of the road, but we still have about a $5 to $6 million delta for casement. Looking for funding opportunities. We're not sure exactly where those dollars are going to come from, and this one actually is probably going to go on hold for a little while we try to figure that out. From a safety perspective, you know, Rob and I worry about this road a lot. 2 lanes, no curb and gutter, open ditches, you know, kids walking up and down on the shoulder, no sidewalks. This is one from a transportation safety standpoint we worry about a lot because it's just not real safe. But we have about a $5 million delta that we are struggling to figure out how to fund. Kearney Street, so this is the extension of a box that will come from 3rd and Kearney all the way up to North Manhattan eventually, and it picks up Campus Creek. So the next Bertrand box, Campus Creek, is that Kearney interceptor that will help carry water that overflows the Bertrand box, will go to Kearney and then out Kearney. The Bertrand box, if you recall, is only rated for a 2-year storm. So about 1.5 inches of rainwater and the Bertrand box overflows. 14th Street Interceptor, so that's the second phase of the South Manhattan project. That 14th Street Interceptor will run from Points all the way up to 14th and Anderson through Aggieville, pick up some Aggieville water. And then Middle Kearney's 2028, and that would be an extension of that 3rd and Kearney Street system as we would keep going towards North Manhattan. So total, you know, about $35 million or so there in projects, which is, you know, why as you look into the out years, we need to build revenue now because these are all of those projects coming online. So we're taking little bites of this gigantic elephant that is the stormwater issues. So for policy updates, fee and lieu system, again, this would be for only the downtown east and west watershed. We had the Wood or AMEC Foster Wheeler who did the downtown watershed plan. They did some modeling for us a couple of years ago to look at what the water surface profiles would look if we built out all of our CIP. So all of those north ditches, all of those Kearney systems, all of that, what's the water surface profile look like? Dropped water surface is about 2.5 feet. So if you're at Sonic, that's a big deal. That's a very big deal. We also had them look at continuing with the detention policy that we have, which is if you develop more than a half an acre, if you add an impervious square foot, you have to detain that impervious square foot. In their opinion, and the modeling showed, you're better off doing an in lieu system, you're better off putting your CIP in progress, and you're better off building your CIP because detention only fixes additional water. Your CIP lowers water levels. I can't make somebody detain for something that they're not creating. So that's where the fee and lieu system comes in. If they didn't want to detain, they could help pay into the stormwater fund, and then when I come up Kearney, instead of a 7x7 box, I build an 8x7 box. I have those dollars to upsize all of that stuff. We're going through that policy now. We want to share it with consultants, developers. Again, it's an option that the developer can agree to. They don't have to. If they choose to detain on their property, they can still detain. From our initial numbers, we think it's going to be a whole heck of a lot easier and cheaper to pay the fee in lieu. But I'm not a developer. I don't play one on TV. They can make those individual decisions. If they want to come to us with a fee in lieu, they can certainly do that. All of those agreements would come back before the commission. So again, any revenue generated would be used in the downtown east and west watersheds. So they'd advance those CIPs that I just showed you. And then the tributary stream and detention pond study. Again, the selection committee just got together today and went through the proposals, and we've come up with somebody that we think is going to do a good job for us. We're going to look at maintenance activities on private property. Should they be maintaining that? Should the city be maintaining that? Rob and I have always argued that detention ponds is the only infrastructure in the city that is privately maintained. We maintain water, we maintain sewer, we maintain storm sewer, we maintain traffic signals. But for some reason, detention ponds, we ask private citizens to maintain those. And if you're downstream of that pond, you probably aren't real happy. Just like if you're upstream of the water main break, you're probably not real happy. So we're gonna have a consultant look at it. They're gonna give us some recommendations on what other cities do. And then we're also gonna look at the tributary stream study. So the bigger tributaries, Little Kittens, the Seacos, the Prairie Lakes, the Marlatte ditches, all of those. And what do other cities do? Do they maintain them? Do they hire somebody? Do they have HOAs do that? All of those questions. Again, there's over 100 HOA maintained detention ponds in the city. It's about 112. And most of them are 20 to 30 years old, so you can imagine what's in them. Probably not a lot of stormwater, probably about everything besides stormwater. So we're looking forward to this one. This has been a question Rob and I have had for 3 or 4 years. You know, what should our policy be? Where should we be headed? And this one's really going to help us with that. So we're looking forward to that. We should have some information back by mid-year to help share with the commission and then talk about policy at that time. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
How far out will Casement Road be?
If you
I
find
know
me
we're-
$5 million,
I
I'll bid
know
it by
we're
the end of the year.
We're putting it on hold.
Yeah.
Obviously. It's $8 million, but.
Yeah, we've got about 3 to 3.5 identified between stormwater and the trail fund. The problem we have with Casement is we don't have a lot of accidents, so I can't get a safety grant. I don't have a ton of delay, so I can't get, you know, like a cost share grant. I don't have a lot of businesses there, so I can't do Eco-Devo. It's just a tough one to.
So far, it's only been, and the county have only been able to make progress by doing small pieces.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the way it'll probably have to progress.
Yeah. We've gone past the county part, so
Yep.
now everything that's
I know.
left is in the city.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
you know, it's a high priority for me. I would love to do that project just
Yeah.
from a safety aspect. You know, we've got a junior high on it. We've got an elementary school on it.
Okay. I just wondered, I mean, maybe before we add new projects, other new projects, we could give it a higher priority. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, I mean, we don't know all the rules for the new grant money that's coming out. There might be some opportunities there, but, you know, we've been fortunate that we haven't had a lot of bad accidents, and that there may be some intersections, some other things we can do piecemeal, but, the big cost is the open ditches and converting it from a rural section to an urban section.
Yeah.
Those always get expensive.
Knox Lane too. Anyway, we have a nice sidewalk there.
And we've got a lot better at that now. We've been partnering with the county like on Marlatte and on Denison. So we've partnered with the county, we've shared costs.
Yeah.
We've done a lot better over the last 10 to 20 years. You know, look at Wildcat Creek Road, Eureka. Unfortunately, Casement was 30 years ago and that partnership just wasn't what it is today.
I'm hearing the K-Man music.
Uh-oh. The K-Man music? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Unless you have questions, okay.
Thank you, everybody.
So unless you want to extend further, we would, this is the time that we would have the city manager report. And Ron said he doesn't have many points, but I asked him if he'd just put it in writing to us.
But I can give you a couple of quick updates
Okay.
if you're
We have
willing to do that.
2 minutes.
So I know you all got a letter from Rich Jankovich and Janet on the AUSA trip, and just a reminder, next Friday's the deadline to commit to that. That's to get the room, so just let us know if you're.
Yeah, I know I responded back to him and said that I thought we should have somebody go, but I expected it more to be like the mayor or the pro tem or something. Like,
What's the date again?
The dates are October 9th through the 12th.
Oh, yeah.
And right now, I'm planning to go. But
I don't know that I am. I think I'm gonna go to the Kansas, the League of Kansas Municipalities. It's in-state, but I know you've.
Is that the same weekend?
Yeah. They're exactly the same time, I think, right?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm going to commit to go to the league. And I don't know, Mark, you have gone to AUSA before. And I know Yusha has been interested in the past and has gone in the past. So why don't you work it out?
This Friday or next Friday?
Next
3 days?
Friday.
3 days or 10 days?
10
10
days.
days. 19th.
Give me another week.
Okay.
Is that good for you, Yusha?
All right.
Okay, all
I
right,
wasn't gonna go, but
okay,
I've been on the fence.
yeah.
And just a lot of meetings coming up. The next 3 are pretty full, so a lot of things on the activity. Then we do have that, next work session would be the joint work session with Park and Rec Board. So we should probably talk about format, whether y'all want to be up here or use some of the side tables, and you want a staff presentation about kind of where we're at with things, and just what kind of format do you want?
I know they
Work
wanted
out
to have a
best.
good give and take between the commission and the board to be able to go back and forth with discussion style.
And that
So
might
I-
not, us be up here is.
Yeah,
not
maybe
very
more of a
conducive
round
to
in a
that.
circle
Yeah.
type of thing that would.
All right, you want to go out there?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know how much time we're gonna have the next meeting, because I had kind of a list of things, and I know we don't have time tonight. We still had what Wynn had talked about with the social services and the alcohol. I had actually asked legal about sign theft and criminal damage, possible ordinance. The ASUA attendance, you did.
We could maybe add a briefing
Huh?
on legislative.
Oh, we could add a briefing session on to legislative.
Let's do that. Next week?
So you want to do that next week? So would you put it, what time?
At the end.
At the end.
Oh, at the end, okay, all right, okay, let's do
Those meetings can go to 10.
30,
11.
11.
10.
Those meetings seem to go faster.
Yeah, yeah. Ordinarily, work sessions aren't a problem. It's just when we have so much information, Rob. Thank you, by the way. Thank you all.
There a
for
motion
your-
to adjourn?
For your
I move we,
presentations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you like to call the roll, Jared?
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Motta?
Yes.
Mayor Morris?
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes?
Commissioner Reddy?
yes.
Meeting's adjourned.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.